On to our city council meeting this evening. We note all members of the council are present. Our Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Administrator Scott Darrington, after which opening remarks will be offered by Councilman Sid Lamone.
Everybody rise and follow me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for the opportunity we have to come here tonight as council members, staff, and the community to better learn how we can serve thee, serve thy residents, serve the businesses of our community. We thank thee for the freedoms that we have, for our first responders who serve and protect us. We thank thee for the volunteers in our city and the time that they give to make our city better. We thank thee for all of the opportunities we have in our community. Please bless it as we go throughout the night tonight, that we can do so in a civil and respectful manner, that we can have an open mind and open heart as we make decisions on behalf of the residents. Please bless that we can be able to make decisions that are financially wise and that we'll be able to go into the future for many years, and that those who are here tonight will be able to see the work that is put into those decisions. We love thee and we say these things in the name of thy son Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Okay, in the approval of the agenda this evening,
Mayor, I make the,
I'm just going to call out,
sorry.
we need to move item 12A to right after number 6. So we go into the redevelopment agency, come out, and then we go, as council, we address item 12A. Are there any other changes to the agenda?
That's it.
Okay.
For presentations, there's a group that I would like to recognize, but we can do that during the presentation portion.
Okay.
So.
Mayor, I make a motion to approve tonight's meeting agenda as stated by you.
Okay. We have a motion and we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, it sounded unanimous to me. All right, now we need to adjourn as the city council and reconvene as the redevelopment agency of Pleasant Grove.
Mayor, I make a motion to adjourn and convene as the redevelopment agency of Pleasant Grove.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, turn to your redevelopment agency agenda, which I don't have,
Right.
so
Right here.
is that it?
Purple.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. I thought it was the draft agenda for the next meeting. All right, we're convened now as the redevelopment agency of Pleasant Grove. This is a public hearing to take comments regarding the adoption of the project area plan and project area budget for the Grove Tower Community Reinvestment Area located east of I-15, west of 2000 West, between Pleasant Grove Boulevard and Grove Parkway. It's about 22 acres of land.
And Randy Sant is
Randy?
here to present that for us.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, as you are aware, we've been working on this particular project for a number of months, and tonight is the public hearing which will formally establish this 22 acres of property as a project area for the use of tax increment financing. This particular project includes a 6-story office building which is currently under construction on this area. And as we have discussed, our particular incentives will be used to help with that particular building, which will bring approximately $50 million of investment into Pleasant Grove community over as it's being constructed and the other development occurs on the site. The reason we hold this plan or this public hearing is we have drafted a plan and we have prepared a budget. And under state law, we are required to hold a public hearing on that plan and to hold a public hearing on that budget. For the record, I'd like to just enter a couple of things that we have done, and then we'd obviously turn it over to the public for any comment. As in accordance with the redevelopment statute, this public hearing has been advertised. The property owner, of which there is only one, has received notice of this public hearing, as well as have all of the taxing entities that are involved with the tax increment financing. We've also sent them a letter and asked them if they had any questions to consult with us. I did have a phone call from the Central Utah Water District to talk a little bit about the project, and particularly the fact that they do now have some criteria that they've put in place that we would need to follow in order to get their participation in the project area. That is the only taxing entity that we have received any comments from. We've followed all of the requirements of the statute, which brings us to this point of this public hearing. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'll answer any questions that you may have as a board, but we'd like to turn it over for any public comments.
Okay. Have we sufficiently covered the project so the public is prepared to comment?
As far as the overall, and I don't know, Randy, what you have specific to the budget, if we need to make some copies. But in essence, we have approached the school district, the county, the city. We're still working with Central Utah Water and North Utah Water Conservancy districts to get a particular participation from them over the next 20 years as a tax incentive back to the developer, St. John Properties, for the Grove Tower. A part of this incentive is something that would go back to them, really at the request of the city council to say we would like to see something different than a single-story office, something that will help attract more business and help become more of an anchor in our city, particularly at our gateway. So this was their response, and they said if we do this, we do need some financial help. They are incurring some additional costs due to some additional infrastructure and things that they need to do, and so they asked for that help. Each taxing entity, the school district at about $2.4 million, the city at just over $1.5 million, the county at, I want to say it's about $400,000. Central Utah Water, do you remember, Randy? $358,000. And this is over 20 years. And so people understand, once the project's built and the taxes are being generated, we're giving a portion of their taxes that they have generated to the city back to them. And so for the city, we get to keep 25%. For the county and the school, they keep 50% of the taxes generated and give 50% of that back. And then same Central Utah, we're asking for 75%, and same with North Utah Water. So that's the basic synopsis. When we entered into the interlocal agreements with those entities, it was on a contingency basis as long as we adopted the project area and the project budget. So you have a copy that we could make photocopies and pass around for those. So I know that the council has these in your packet. I don't know if, and they've been available, so if the public, when we notice it, if they wanted to see the budget, but we don't have a copy to put up on the screen, I guess is what
You
I'm
have
saying.
your slide that either you have it or Randy has it, that we used with the school district, I think.
I do not have that slide presentation, but what I can go through is a couple of the numbers in the budget. Scott outlined for you the participation that is being given by the different entities, and they have agreed to, by interlocal agreement, to do that. But there's other revenues that will be generated by this, and one of the other things that we have done is, in particular, is we've tried to look at what the ongoing costs would be to service the facility, and to be certain that there will be adequate money to cover those costs. In addition to the property tax, and that's what the tax increment is, of which the city will receive 25%. There's also franchise tax that the city will receive, which will come off of the utility use of the building. And there is also projected some sales tax that would also be generated because there will be some retail around this facility. Based on this analysis, the total amount of money that will be going to Pleasant Grove City with this would be about $5.4 million. Your cost to service this, which would be the cost to the police and the fire, which would come out of your general fund budget, and also the costs that would go to Public Works to take care of roads and things like that, is about 3.7. So there's a net amount of money coming to the city, even with you participating in it with property tax. So your costs for services are going to be taken care of with the additional revenues that will be generated from this, and that will move forward. Everybody sees an increase, the school district, the county, because this is a brand new building being built that is just coming onto the tax rolls. And again, as Scott mentioned, we're giving back a portion of their property tax money that they are paying. No other money is being thrown into this project. That kind of outlines the different percentages and the years, and the total amount of money that is coming from everyone is the 4.7 million, and then that shows how we're using the funds. 4.1 million of that goes to the developer. We're keeping, we're required under this particular new law that was put in place, we have to keep some money for affordable housing, which is 10%, and then we have administrative money that will come back to the redevelopment agency to cover the cost for operating the actual project area. And as we mentioned, the use of the money is mainly to help cover some of the costs with the infrastructure and things like that that the developer has to put in here, stabilizing the soils. There's a little higher water table there, so there's some additional costs that the developer is incurring for building a larger building than a single story on that property. This will be a Class A office building. One of the things we're requiring the developer to do is that he has to bring in and lease a significant portion of this building to a well-known tenant that is currently not in Utah County. So he needs to bring in somebody significant that will give us some name recognition. And again, it's a 6-story structure, which is much more impressive than a 1-story structure, and will give some identity to the community.
Thanks, Randy. Did you have those net numbers?
Well, the net numbers, I just have what's here in the budget.
Thank you.
So,
All right, let's, do we have any questions that we want to ask before we go to the public hearing?
Yeah, let me ask a couple of quick questions, Randy. I've had questions asked of me regarding the 10% that goes towards affordable housing. Which party of the taxing entities or the developer actually bears that cost of the 10%?
No, that will actually come into the redevelopment agency. That'll be money that the RDA will collect, and then the RDA will be able to use that to give to the city to support affordable housing projects. And there's a number of uses that can be used for, but the statute requires that we have to collect a 10%. Now, we can collect that at the end of the project area. We can collect that with the extension of the project area, but it is a requirement that it has to be collected. There is a real good chance, I think, within the next 3 to 4 years, that section of the redevelopment statute will change, and that may no longer be a requirement. But right now we do, and if that's no longer a requirement, then we can address it when it comes. But that money can be used for whatever definition that the city and the RDA come up with for affordable housing. I know some cities have actually collected to help pay their police department, because sometimes there's a number of additional calls that come in affordable housing and things like that. So the statute's pretty broad as to what it can be used for, as long as it defines an affordable housing use. As we sit down and negotiate, that would be for this community.
When it's collected by the RDA, it's collected from the developer.
Collected from the tax increment, the property tax that is generated. That is correct. So it is collected from the developer.
well, it's paid to the county, and then the county sends it back to us per our agreement. So the city holds the funds, and then we write a check to the developer based on our agreements with them. The housing funds will just stay with us till we decide if there's ever a project we want to use that for. They're there. If we never want to do a project with that, I think we talk about if the law changes and that money can become back available for an RDA use as opposed to a housing use. And the administrative cost is something that we just retain for our costs in order to put everything into place.
Okay, thanks. Another quick question I have, Randy, with the project area map, do the maps differ by taxing entity? My understanding is that Pleasant Grove City is the only taxing entity that offered an increment on the retail portion. So does each taxing entity have its own project area that's different?
No, the project area is the same, and everybody within that, we have 5 taxing entities that levy a tax in there. But what had happened is, as we were going through the various negotiations with the different taxing entities for the participation, those entities chose not to participate, the county and the school district in particular, on the retail portion of it. They would participate on the office. Central Utah Water and Pleasant Grove City are the two that are being asked to help with the inline retail only, not the pads. Nobody's participating on the pads, just the inline retail that will be developed as part of the office tower.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, let's open it up for public comment. If you have any questions or comments on this item, please come up and state your name. Oh, I thought we had one. Close.
It's fine.
Okay, thank you. Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing and come back up here. Further discussion? All right, let's move to item 3 then. It's to consider for adoption Resolution 2017-06 RDA, approving the project area plan for the Grove Tower Community Reinvestment Area as the official plan for the CRA.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, as stated, this resolution will be the resolution adopted by the agency that formally adopts the plan and authorizes us to take the plan and send it to the city council for their action. For the public, the city council, under statute, the redevelopment agency is its separate entity of the city and has its own board and has its own chairman. But under law, the city council and the mayor acts as that board. So right now, you're in your capacity as the redevelopment agency taking action on these items. The ordinance, when it comes before, will come before the city council. But basically, they're similar documents. One's an ordinance, one's a resolution. So with your vote this evening, then we will have adopted this particular plan as the official plan for the project area. And we then can then formally move forward and start our 30-day challenge period.
Is there any discussion on the resolution?
If I may, Mayor, I'd like to just put a note into the record. I opposed this tax increment when it was first brought before us on a number of grounds. One of the concerns I had was that I believe Pleasant Grove City did not negotiate as well as other taxing entities like the county. The county got a very good deal and a better arrangement with additional lookbacks and protections and only on the office space, not an increment on retail. For that reason, I oppose it. For that reason, I will oppose tonight all of the motions related to this, just out of consistency. But as I think the developer knows well, this is an exciting thing to see. I just think we could have gotten a better deal as a city.
Thank you. Any other discussion? If not, I'll call for a motion.
I make a motion for adoption of Resolution 2017-06 RDA, approving the project area plan for the Grove Tower Community Reinvestment Area as the official plan for the CRA.
I'll second it.
Sorry. That was like all three of us.
Okay. We have a motion by Eric, and Diana was the loudest. So we'll take her as the second by voice. Diana?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Sid?
Yes.
Ben?
No.
Lynn?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries 4-1. We'll now go to item 4 to consider for adoption a resolution 2017-07 RDA approving the project area budget for the Grove Tower Community Reinvestment Area as the official budget of the CRA.
Again, Mr. Chair, members of the board, the redevelopment law requires that we adopt a budget for a project area. And we have prepared that budget, and this budget would basically outline, as you saw in the chart, the anticipated increment to be received, and the uses of that increment, which will cover the developer portion of the project. It will cover the housing, and it will cover some administration. And again, with adoption of this resolution, it starts the 30-day challenge period for the budget document also.
Thanks, Randy. Questions or comments on this item?
Nope.
Okay, if not, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to adopt Resolution 2017-07 RDA, approving the project area budget for the Grove Tower Community Reinvestment Area as the official budget of the CRA.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Eric, a second by Sid. All right, by voice, Lynn,
Yes.
Ben,
No.
Sid,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Diana.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-1. Are there minutes to approve for this one? The 7th, February 7th? Okay, any comments on those?
I make the motion that we approve the minutes of the February 7th.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. We now need to adjourn and reconvene as the city
I
council.
make the motion that we exit as the Pleasant Grove City Redevelopment Agency and enter back into regular city council meeting.
We have a motion.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we are now reconvened as the Pleasant Grove City, and we're on item number 6. Let's see, number 12A. Okay, this is an action item. It's to consider for adoption an ordinance 2017-13, adopting the Grove Tower Community Reinvestment Project Area Plan as approved by the Pleasant Grove City Redevelopment Agency as the official Community Reinvestment Project Area Plan for the project area, and directing that the notice of the adoption be given as required by statute and providing for an effective date. Randy?
Mayor, members of the council, your redevelopment agency just held a public hearing and just adopted the plan for the Grove Tower redevelopment project area. And now the redevelopment agency has forwarded this plan to you and has asked you to consider adopting it by ordinance so that it will be an official plan, which will allow us to go ahead and implement the budget, the interlocal agreements, as well as to move forward with the formal development of the project area. That's
Is there
what
any
this
discussion on this item? Sorry, Randy.
is. Okay.
Just trying to move things along.
Nothing else, sir.
And if I may, Mayor, I'll make the same comment in this meeting. We can just reflect it from the prior minutes, but I'd like to make sure it's in both minutes of both the RDA and the City Council, why I would be opposed.
Okay. Any other comments?
Randy, thank you. Daniel, front row, thank you for coming to our community and bringing this great project. So,
Well, and thank you, Randy. I mean, I know you negotiate on our behalf, and I know you do the best to get us the best deal, and we appreciate that. And I think this is what the residents want. They want us to offer incentives to bring anchor tenants to Pleasant Grove because we desperately need the retail, the office. We need more buildings down there that will help our community grow. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I make a motion to adopt ordinance 2017-13, adopting the Grove Tower Community Reinvestment Project Area Plan as approved by the Pleasant Grove City Redevelopment Agency as the official community reinvestment project area plan for the project area, and directing that notice of the adoption be given as required by statute and providing for effective date.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Eric and a second by Diana. By voice, Diana.
Yes.
Eric.
Yes.
Sid.
Yes.
Ben.
No.
Lynn.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-1. Thank you, Randy.
Thank you very
Appreciate
much.
it. Daniel, all else involved, thank you for your work on this. Go build. Okay,
You don't have time to sit here, Daniel.
but you're welcome to stay.
Yeah, you can.
Okay.
And seat well chosen, by the way. Anytime you can sit next to a crown, it's a good day.
Everyone who was afraid to sit next to her. Guys,
Oh, yeah, we're talking about Carl.
all right. The next item is number 7. It's an open session. We're going to invite Ms. Pleasant Grove to address us first. And then if anyone else has anything that's not on the agenda, not a public hearing, or you just have comments that you'd like to make, you can come up at that time and state your name. Go ahead.
Okay, I just wanted to invite the city council and everybody here to come to the Miss Pleasant Grove pageant. It is this Saturday at Pleasant Grove High School at 7 o'clock. And if you get tickets, they look like this. From me or any of the contestants, they are $8 until Friday night. And then on Saturday at the door, they are $11. So come get your tickets, come and watch some amazing girls compete for this crown, except this one's mine. And
One
so-
similar to it.
it's similar, yes, and a similar sash too, except not 2016. Anyways, so come to the pageant. I look forward to seeing all of you there, and come say hi and enjoy. Thanks,
Great.
everyone.
And you want to get that picture? Is that right? Okay. Does everyone huddle up?
Come in front of the table here.
Just right here.
Would you like us to come over?
Should I photobomb in the back?
So there's not like there's a ton of room there, but.
Closer.
Yeah, Ally, we vote you get in the middle. Everybody.
The feng shui of the whole room.
Push the chair back. Really hot in here. You're in charge of the air. 1, 2, 3. Measure, right? No one else. Run the air.
Is this your last official thing?
Officially, yes. Uh-huh.
Wow. Thank you very, very much.
Okay. Anyone else that would like to address the council, please come forward. Jane?
That's a hard one to follow. Good luck to you. Those were still traditionalists in Pleasant Grove. I'm going to take us from the new part of Pleasant Grove that we're developing back to the village. That's where I am, and I've been called the village keeper. I have a concern, and I think you can educate me and help me know how to do this. It's something. I have a folder that goes back to 2001 that says that in 2001 I was concerned about, it would have been Utah Power then instead of Rocky Mountain Power, coming into our city and wanting to, in the name of safety, cut our trees in V's and however they wanted to. I have another letter, 2005, and here it is 2017 and 2017, and I'm still concerned. I'm Jane Robinson. We own the bungalow. Our family has been generationally involved in that corner piece of property. It's the southwest corner of the old Fort Wall. Creek Drive in front that no one uses anymore. It's second south was an Indian footpath into the Fort Wall, into our little Pleasant Grove. So I value very much that I'm part of Old Town, and I just can't believe that our trees don't look like that, Pleasant Grove, City of Trees, because they don't. Even this year, this is the look. I want you to see this. I'm going to bring it up.
Is that from the power company?
They call it properly pruned trees. And I have 16 mulberry trees, fruitless mulberry trees, planted because in the pioneer days, they brought silkworms. They wanted to have that flourish, which it didn't, but in the name of the pioneers, Roland and I and our boys planted mulberry trees. So when they come in And I pleaded, and I have pleaded. And what I'm going to say is probably never been said, but I would like to be exempt from what their value system is, from my value system as a property owner. And the reason I'm here for help, somewhere in 2001 or before that, there had to be some networking between Utah Power and Pleasant Grove City for them to even have permission to come to Pleasant Grove. And I don't know how that works. I don't know whether there was a contract or permission. I recently have, it was attached to my door. Mayor, I'm going to give you my phone number, 801-358-5521. I've been in touch with Red, and these are wonderful men, and they're gentlemen every time they come. They're doing their job. They're a subcontract doing their job, and they know how I feel. And every year we go through the motions of them knowing how I feel. But this time I said, I'm going to City Hall. Give me time before you come and do this to that I'm going to City Hall. I don't know how many value the trees as much as I do. I'm not saying this is a scope for all of Pleasant Grove, but I would like to be exempt. I care about the history. I care about the southwest corner. I care about a green space. I guess I'm a tree hugger. And I need your help to know how to go about to value my values as a personal property owner. And I'm actually ashamed that this is what we say, because that isn't who we are. We don't value our trees. And I would like our trees to look like trees instead of this. And if anyone wants to comment you that
Sure.
information, and with that, I'll leave it with the council.
Jane, do you mind if I ask how many trees they plan to trim in this most recent request?
Dean, and they look like this. It is properly. This is their measure of properly. And we work very hard as an establishment, a reception center, for 45 years. Our home will be 100 years old this year. And when people pull in and they see half a tree or a tree that's been V'd, and when they say it's in the name of safety, when you get a heavy snowstorm in April, then it's open for those trees to collapse because of the strength of the storm. And there's no way that it's proper. It's in the name of safety, but I woke up the other night, went out and took a piece of paper because I couldn't sleep, and I thought, who deems what is ideal? The city, Utah Power, or property owners? What is ideal? And I leave this with you. I just need help. I've always been one that wanted to help, but now I'm asking for help. I want to be a beautiful corner in the historical part of town, and I don't want my trees demolished. And thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Scott, who in our city would be the person, the resource for Jane to work with?
Yeah, I think in the past, Dion Giles is the one that's, and maybe Jane, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but we've had this discussion before. I think Tina was saying back when Jane was referring to 2001, 2005. I think what we need to do as staff is give us time to do a little research and see what we've agreed to with Rocky Mountain Power in the past. See, we do have a franchise agreement with Rocky Mountain Power that outlines some of these things. We need to review that. And then we can have a conversation with them to see what we can do to keep things safe, but also try to keep the appearance of these trees looking nice. So I think if you just kick it back to us as staff, we'll figure out what we can do, and then we can report back to you.
Comment, and I hope that Utah Power or Rocky Mountain Power gets to hear this comment in this council, that I am so pro them every time I turn on a light switch.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful. I pay for 2 buildings and lights all summer. I'm so pro Rocky Mountain Power. My opinion is, so I don't make this balloon effect all over Pleasant Grove. I would like to be exempt. That's what I would like. Thank you.
Thanks, Jane. Okay, so we're going to
We'll
hand it
follow
back
up
to
on
you
that.
and then,
Yep.
thank you. Okay, anyone else for the open session?
Hi. Good to
I'm
meet
Jacob
you, man.
Sons, 65 East 1100 North, Pleasant Grove, Utah.
You're good.
I assumed you'd know that. Been a resident for 7 years, 8 years now. Really enjoyed living here. It's a beautiful city. The reason I'm here today is to share with you the citizen initiative that I have put forward. I'm the primary sponsor for this initiative. Wanted to read it to you and then ask if you have any questions about it. Just let the council know that we're.
Before you start,
Yeah.
you said you're the primary. Is there others that are involved?
Yeah, there's actually there's 6 people who have signed. Well, 6 people's names are on it. One accidentally didn't sign it, so we have 5 signatures on the initiative.
You have those? What's the names?
No, I don't have those.
Okay.
But I did submit those to the city last Wednesday, so they should have been submitted to
We received
the
it.
finance officer by 3 days after that. So it would have been Monday. The finance officer.
Yeah, the finance director actually got it Friday.
Oh, awesome! So received it on Friday. In that packet, it has the signatures there, the original documents. I have the photocopy documents if you wanted to see them. I don't have them on me. So let me read this to you. It says, an ordinance of Pleasant Grove City, Utah, County, Utah, creating a new city code section regarding an annual $2.625 million general fund transfer into a dedicated city road repair and maintenance fund to supplement Class C road funds, including an effective date. Whereas providing sufficient means for vehicle travel and road infrastructure within the city is considered necessary, and whereas proper maintenance of pavement both saves money in future repairs and provides greater safety to residents and visitors traveling on our city streets, and whereas building and maintaining road infrastructure is a proper, essential, and fundamental role of municipal governments, and whereas the voting citizens of Pleasant Grove have expressed through survey results, statements to elected officials, and by signing, sponsoring, and supporting this Fund Roads First citizen initiative that road repair and maintenance should be Pleasant Grove's highest priority. Whereas on March 1st, 2017, citizen sponsors presented proposed ordinance language to begin preparation of a fiscal note and the gathering of sufficient signatures to create this requirement in the Pleasant Grove Municipal Code. And whereas by April 15th of either 2017 or 2018, sufficient signatures were gathered to require the ordinance to be placed on the November 2017 or 2018 general election ballot. And whereas on November 7th, 2017 or 2018, the majority of duly registered voters of Pleasant Grove City voted in favor of the citizen initiative, finding it to be in the public's interest and consistent with their goals and policies. Now, therefore, be it ordained by the citizens of Pleasant Grove City, Utah County, State of Utah, as follows. Section 1. A new section of Pleasant Grove Municipal Code is hereby created to read as follows. Each year, during the Pleasant Grove City annual budgeting process, for so long as this section remains law, Pleasant Grove City shall transfer $2,625,000 from its general fund to a special fund created to supplement any Class C road funds and to be used exclusively for road repairs and maintenance during that fiscal year. Pleasant Grove City is obligated by this section to spend the entire amount of the transfer on road pavement repairs and maintenance within the municipal limits of Pleasant Grove City within 1 year from the date of the transfer. No portion of the transferred funds may be spent on administration. Nothing in this section prohibits Pleasant Grove City from proposing or pursuing tax increases. Let me read that again. Nothing in this section prohibits Pleasant Grove City from proposing or pursuing tax increases or other means to fund other priorities in the city, so long as all applicable state, federal, and constitutional processes and requirements are met. And Pleasant Grove City has made this transfer to the Fund Roads First. Section 2, severability. The sections, paragraphs, sentences, clauses, and phrases of the ordinance are severable. If any such section, paragraph, sentence, clause, or phrase shall be declared invalid or unconstitutional by the valid judgment or decree of a court or of competent jurisdiction, such invalidity or unconstitutionality shall not affect the validity or constitutionality of any of the remaining sections, paragraph, sentence, clause, or phases of this ordinance. Section 3, effective date. The ordinance shall take effect immediately upon its passage and posting as provided by law. Section 4, approved and adopted and made effective by the citizens of Pleasant Grove, Utah, Utah County, Utah, this 7th day of November 2017 or 2018, depending on when it will be on the ballot. Signed and mayor, attested by the city recorder. Any questions?
Yes.
We have an item tonight dedicated to the discussion on roads. I'd like to ask that we postpone discussion on this item until we get there. I think it might be more encompassing than just this. It'll be.
Are we going to be able to stay, Jacob?
I can stay for the whole meeting if you're willing to allow me to make comments during that time.
We
I know
can
it's
ask you questions. It's not a
Okay.
public hearing, but we've
Yeah, I
deferred
understand
it. So
So yeah, any questions? So then we'll defer to that point.
okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else for the public hearing or for the open session? Okay. Seeing none, we'll close the open session. The next item are consent items. We don't have any minutes tonight, but we are approving the paid vouchers. Any discussion?
Mayor, I make a motion to approve the consent items.
Second.
We have a motion by Eric, second by Sid. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Item 9A, to consider the appointment of Sam Sanderson and Garth Lovell as Planning Commission alternates. Are they here tonight? I didn't look. Please stand.
Come on over to the podium. I mean,
On over.
come on over.
Yeah, 20 questions.
Could you each just take a minute and tell us a little bit about yourselves?
My name is Garth Lovell. I've been in Pleasant Grove City for 16 years, have 4 kids, all who have attended Pleasant Grove High, except my 8th grader who's over at PG Junior. Spent 24 years with Walmart till this last summer, and now I currently work with Murdoch Auto here locally and plan to stay in Pleasant Grove for who knows, for as long as my kids are going to continue school and probably beyond.
Awesome. Thanks, Garth.
Sam Sanderson. I've lived in Pleasant Grove for a handful of years, but the roots go deeper. My family's been here for a while longer, but I'm happy to be here and happy to have the chance to serve.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any discussion? I'll
Thank you
entertain a
for
motion.
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we approve the appointment of Sam Sanderson and Garth Lovell with hopes that he's half as awesome as Taffy Lovell as Planning Commission alternates.
Second.
We have a motion by Ben, second by Eric. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
Okay, we're going to move
Can I
to.
do mine? Is that okay?
Oh, yes. Sorry. Go
Okay.
ahead.
So I invited a group of honors history. I want to get this right. Is that correct? From Pleasant Grove Junior. They're 8th graders over there. And Mr. Spence is their teacher. And they recently won and I want to get this right as well, a Constitution competition and took first place. They've done this now for many years under Mr. Spence. I'll let him fill you in on the details, but we have them here tonight. And I think it's important to recognize groups like this just as we recognize athletes or any other group in our city, because this is a lot of time and effort put into a competition like this, especially when it comes to the Constitution. Very important. So Mr. Spence, I'll let you introduce your group and take a minute and so we can recognize them.
We have about a third of the class here with a 3-day weekend and remembering whenever they're supposed to come. But I'd like to have the following students stand that are here that I've noticed. And then I'd like to read off the names of all the students in the class so that if any are in your neighborhood, you might also recognize them as well. But with us tonight is Ethan Anderson, Jaden Anderson, Ethan Bramhall, Amber Crosley, Gage Nairden, Sky Siemens, Sam Skoy, Brandon Wooten, Katie Young. And then the other members of the class that participated in that is Colton Bayless, Jordan Boyle, Abby Burton, Scott Cloward, Aspen Enerson, Chris Evans, Nathan Feveryear, Garrett Hollis, Anna Mayo, Elizabeth McDonald, Carter Merrill, Truman Porter, Toby Reed, Ethan Staley, Henry Summerall, Kaylee Talbot, and Xander Thompson. And these are great kids. Not only did they take first in the competition this year, this is the fourth time in 6 years that Pleasant Grove Junior High has taken first, and we missed out last year by 1 point and took second last year. But also 5 out of the 6 units were also ranked the top units in the entire Constitution competition. To give you a little bit of an overview as far as what it is, schools from across the state participate. Not all schools participate altogether, but many of them are participating at a lower level and have to qualify for the state finals. And so they bring anywhere from 5 to 6 to possibly 7 schools to the state finals, usually 1 school from each congressional district at least, sometimes 2 schools from each congressional district. And these students study the Constitution thoroughly, and then we divide them into groups to be experts in one of 6 areas in relationship to the Constitution, where they prepare a 4-minute presentation in front of the judges, and then they have a 6-minute follow-up session with the judges. And then from that, the judges then decide who has performed the best as far as showing their knowledge and being able to actually talk off the cuff and show their actual understanding of our government. And so it's been a great experience. And I told them they had to win because this is my last year at the Pleasant Grove Junior High after 40 years. So they made me very proud. And so they're just a great bunch of kids.
Well, thank you so much. And I don't want to kind of give away ages, but Mr. Spence was my teacher, my favorite teacher at PG Junior. So, and I really appreciate all you've done for the community, because this is preparing, I think, future council members, future governors, and hopefully even beyond that point, and leaders in our nation. Because if all of you who participate in that competition have a love for the Constitution like you do, then you need to be in a role like this, because you make decisions every day that involve that. So thank you, because there's not a lot of kids your age that are studying the Constitution and participating like that. And so that's very remarkable. So thank you for your efforts, and thank you, Mr. Spence, to you.
They're each having their medals, and then this is the plaque that we received. That will be in the school to commemorate that.
Thank you.
So,
Awesome.
Congratulations.
Congrats.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Well done.
Okay, we're going to go now to item 10A, report from George K. Baum on our general obligation bonds.
Mayor, council, staff, pleasure to be here tonight. It's an honor. All the students are leaving, but I was going to ask which section of the Utah Constitution covers the Local Bonding Act. But
Would have been a good quiz.
So Taylor and I are very pleased to be here. We will be very brief. We are appreciative to have worked with your great staff and with you, Mayor, on the issuance of these general obligation bonds. The summary sheet is passed out, should be displayed here. Really just wanted to hit the tips of the waves. First of all, congratulations to the city for a very successful bonding process. There are so many different parts involved and so many different individuals. Suffice it to say, if you look in that upper left-hand corner, the bonds were sold on January 31st at a true interest cost, or APR, if you will, of 2.827%. At the bottom, you see that the city was successful in obtaining a AA- credit rating. And being in that AA category, the city is part of a very select group, and cities all over the country are envious of that. So congratulations. And the selling in January was strategic, as when the bonds were passed by voters, we worked quickly with Scott and Denise to formulate a strategic calendar to try to enter the marketplace in January. Generally, bond supply is lower in January, which means that investors have fewer bonds to choose from, and we want them to fight over bonds, and that's exactly what took place. Demand was high, supply was low, and whenever you're selling anything, you always want to garner the highest price for what you're selling, and this is the case with bonds. Higher price translates into a lower borrowing cost. And as we met with rating analysts, they remarked publicly in their report that the city enjoys very strong budgetary flexibility, strong liquidity. Your cash position is envious. You've demonstrated good financial performance, and you have seen good property and sales tax growth. Those positive remarks translated into the 6 strong bids that we received for the bonds. Raymond James and Associates was the winning bidder at the 2.8%. And after the sale in January, we closed the bonds on Valentine's Day. And just again want to thank you for the opportunity to work with your great staff, Scott and Denise, and congratulate the city on a very successful bond sale.
Thank you. Do we have any action on this? No. Okay.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Well,
Thanks
Can I
for
ask some
choosing the
questions,
timing.
Gentlemen,
Yes.
before you sit down,
Certainly.
could you speak a little bit to the par amount and what that means for the benefit of those that aren't bond experts or
Sure.
people in the public that may not bond for a living?
Absolutely. So as the voters are aware, the vote was for $9.5 million. The par amount ended up being $9,060,000, and that is the amount that the interest payments are based on. And so you'll see, as the city budgets for its annual debt service payments, that principal amortizes over the 20 years, and the annual principal and interest payments equate to approximately $625,000 per year.
And I've had questions from the public about the transaction costs to issue the bonds, which are in addition to the interest payments. Do you have a number? I've heard different numbers on what the total transaction costs were.
Sure. The total transaction costs were approximately $130,000. About $60,000 of that was a payment to Raymond James and Associates as the winning bidder. They charge what's called an underwriter's discount. It's essentially the cost that they charge to pay their salespeople and distribute the bonds to investors. The other $70,000 came in the form of bond counsel fees, our fees, the rating fees. There's also a platform fee that the city pays to host the bond sale, and there's additional fees for a paying agent. And the city has to also purchase what are called QSIP numbers, which is a way to identify the bonds to the marketplace. We no longer print paper bonds, and so they're registered, and they have to have an identification number.
Thanks.
Those are the costs.
Appreciate that, gentlemen. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. The bond was 9.5.
The voters approved up to 9.5 million.
So is that what the bond amount is that we're borrowing?
The total amount,
Well,
including
they took the 9.5, they back out the closing costs, and so was it 9.3 something that we actually have in cash that we're receiving?
Sure. So the marketplace drives bond prices, and the investors are concerned about rising interest rates. And so right now, based on how you structure the bonds, they actually pay more than face value. It's called bond premium. And so you actually generate additional proceeds in addition to face value. The face value is the principal, which is the $9,060,000. Investors delivered an additional amount over that, so that the total deposit to your construction fund after all costs were paid, was $9,372,000.
Does that help?
That's the amount available for construction.
9.5.
Well, just
Can
to
you take
clarify
9.5
that,
and minus out the costs and the bonus you get.
one thing that the council committed to was not to bond for more than 9.5. If we wanted to roll our closing costs into that, we would have had to borrow more than 9.5.
I understand.
So we borrowed 9.5, we paid the closing costs out of that, and so get 9.37 in our account for construction.
I can be sad.
Hey, nobody's saying you can't. Okay, any other questions?
Thanks.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Okay. I'm not sure how to pronounce this one, so I'm going to spell it. We're now going to go to 10B to discuss have a presentation on AMAR Foundation 5K event.
Hi, thank you for your time. I am representing the AMAR Foundation. We are a foundation that strives to help refugees locally and throughout the world. I got involved with AMAR simply because I, like probably many of you, have seen news and maybe been troubled by how we could help people that are displaced wrongfully. So AMAR's work is to help people both locally and then also found in Iraqi camps that have been displaced by violence. What we're planning in the community is an event to allow other community members to be involved by helping them, and that's by coming out and participating in a 5K event. We call it a 5K event because it'll be an event that runs from 5 to 8 p.m. on March 24th down at Orem High School. Part of the event will be that local refugees, people that are placed here in Utah, will be able to have a little bit of a farmer's market type thing, kind of a fun little family-friendly event, followed by a 1K and 5K run. And so proceeds from the market will go to help those local refugees, and then proceeds from the sales from participants in the race will go to help AMAR's work in Iraq with those camps. And so I wanted to come present, and obviously our aim is to invite as many people as possible to participate in this, and invite you to share this with as many people in the community as you can. Again, our aims are to help those throughout the world, but then also locally. We have plenty in Utah that also need help. And finally, to also provide opportunities for people in the community to find ways that they can help as well. Part of that market will also be other booths set up by other nonprofit organizations for people to contact them and be able to get involved with helping refugees. And so I invite you to come out and participate, and then also to send a message to those that may be victims of this displacement throughout the world, that regardless of political boundaries or safety measures, we still care about them and invite them to feel welcome in our communities. So,
Thank
Chris?
you.
Yeah.
What is AMAR? Is that an acronym?
Yeah, I apologize. I wish I knew. I'm just a BYU student. I showed up to a meeting to help plan, and here I am.
That's how most of us got involved. We just showed up to one meeting, and now, you know.
I don't even remember what happened. No,
I don't know what happened.
So did you get a date out of this?
Yeah, my wife
March
and I are
24th.
participating
I see.
in this.
Okay.
March 24th.
So March 24th, 5 to 8 p.m.
So is there a
At what
Facebook page or
park?
Orem High School?
Oh, Orem High School.
Yeah.
Facebook page or website that we can refer people
So
to?
a good way to find this is just look up Running for Refugees, Running for number 4 Refugees. They have a Facebook page. Also, I figure it's not appropriate to distribute things maybe right now, but I can stay for after the meeting if people would like flyers.
You don't have to do that, but maybe just leave them right here, and then we can get those out. I mean,
That
it might
sounds
be a little while.
Appreciate that.
If you want, you're welcome.
Sounds good. I mean, I love road construction and all. But
Now, do you live here in Pleasant Grove?
I grew up in Highland. We live right now in American Fork in my
Okay.
grandparents' house.
You're getting closer.
Yeah. Well, thank you for serving, especially being a student and married, and that's
Yeah.
a great
Thanks.
effort to be involved with. So thank you.
Appreciate your guys' time and appreciate any efforts you make to spread the word and invite the community to come.
If you just want to leave that flyer here, we can.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I
Okay.
have a stack. I
Okay,
can leave.
perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Okay,
Yeah,
item.
I'm looking on the internet here. Assisting Marsh Arabs and Refugees is the acronym, and it's Amar Foundation is the website, amarfoundation.org. It's a great cause. Thanks for what you're doing.
Okay, moving to item 10C. This is a presentation on recreation branding, and I've got Clint down here.
Yeah,
listed.
I apologize, but we needed to move that. If we
Okay.
can have a motion to move that to April 18th.
I make the motion that we remove item 10C until a later date.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's go to item 11A. This is a public hearing to consider for adoption an ordinance 2017-12 to rezone approximately 1.06 acres from RR zone to R120. Properties located approximately 1890 North, 100 East. Ken?
Thank you, Scott. Okay, this item is coming before you after having been to the Planning Commission recently, and also you'll recognize this development as having come before you in November of this last year, where a rezone was approved and a plat was also approved. So what we have before you tonight is an additional property, an adjoining 1 acre piece to have this, the request is to have the same zoning as was previously approved, and a new subdivision plat that is a revision of the one that you had previously approved that is adding in some additional lots. So on about 2000 North, 100 East is the location, the unthanked property. Showing here the two pieces that were approved last November for rezone and plats approved there. This is the piece that we're discussing tonight, just south of the southern piece, or the southern phase of the Savage Estates development. So it's slightly over 1 acre, and it's currently in the RR zone. They're requesting that we approve a rezone to R120 to be the same as the rest of the development that received that zoning last November. As you can see, we have an aerial showing there. Recently, this home here was taken down. There's some movement of dirt and such going on in that property, so they're moving forward, excuse me, with their proposal. So on, my goodness, excuse me. On this additional 1 acre piece, it will allow 3 additional lots based on lot size averaging to be added to the plat, and that will be the next item that we'll be looking at, or down the agenda a little bit, we'll look at that. But it is specifically this 1.06 acres that is being sought for a rezone from RR to R120. The excuse me, the Planning Commission did recommend unanimously for approval on this rezone.
Okay, we've reviewed this a few times. Are there any additional clarifying questions for Ken before we open it up for public hearing? Okay, let's go ahead and open it up to the public. If you have any comments or questions on this item, please come up and state your name. I'll jump at once. All right, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and bring it back up here. Any further discussion?
It's pretty straightforward.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Make the motion, Mayor, that we consider adoption of ordinance 2017-12 to rezone approximately 1.06 acres from RR Rural Residential Zone to R120 Single Family Residential Zone on property located approximately 1890 North, 100 East in the Big Springs neighborhood.
Second.
We have a motion by Ben and a second by Lynn. By voice, Diana?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Sid?
Yes.
Ben?
Yes.
Lynn?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you. All right, moving down to item 12B. This is to consider for approval a revised final plat for Savage States Plat A, including the addition of 4 lots to the previously approved 12-lot plan called Savage States Plat A subdivision located at approximately 2150 North, 100 East in the proposed R120 single-family residential zone. Ken?
Okay, so as mentioned, the newly rezoned property would allow for 3 additional lots. However, on this revised plat, we are also asking to add this lot into the subdivision plat here because, as I will show on the plat, okay, this is what was previously approved, showing that piece right in through there with the road coming down on the southern end and then swinging up. The roadway here, in order to make a good curve on the corner here, it was necessary to bring this lot or add just a few square footage onto this existing lot and replat it and make it a part of this subdivision here to make sense with the roadway improvements. So it's really not creating a new lot there, it's just changing its boundaries a little bit, which required a vacation of this lot from its existing subdivision plat and putting it into this subdivision plat. So that is not a new lot, it's an existing lot. These are the 3 new that are being created with that additional property, but as you can see, portions of those lots also go up into the existing property. So that it made it, because of that additional area up and through here, as well as through the lot size averaging in the ordinance, it made it so that 3 lots could be added to this with just 1 acre being added to the overall. So no increased density, just new property. And this was reviewed recently by the Planning Commission, and the preliminary plat was approved by them. And with this, staff, engineering, and community development recommend approval of the final plat.
Any questions for Ken? Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I make a motion for approval of a revised final plat for Savage States Plat A, including the addition of 4 lots to the previously approved 12-lot plat called Savage States Plat A subdivision located at approximately 2150 North, 100 East in the proposed R120 single-family residential zone, Big Springs neighborhood.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Motion by Eric, second by Diana. Do we need to say anything about what you just said about that last lot?
Well, it does include a vacation. It should be in the motion there, is it not?
I revise that.
Yeah,
Or can we just say adopting the exhibits, conditions, and findings of staff?
That'll work. That'll
Okay.
cover it.
Do I need to re-second? And I'll re-second that.
Okay, we have a restated motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. Down to item 12C, to consider for adoption a resolution 2017-014, authorizing the mayor to sign an agreement and notice to proceed with VanCon Inc. for the construction of the Pleasant Grove City Vac Truck Decant facility located at approximately 400 North, 600 West in the amount of $308,900 and providing for an effective date. Marty?
Mayor, Council, this was an item that we awarded a couple of weeks ago. We are now, we've finalized getting their bonding and insurance and contract documents ready to go ahead and sign the agreement and notice to proceed. Planning for a pre-bid meeting this Thursday with, or pre-construction meeting with the contractor this Thursday, get started on that project.
Any further questions or new questions for Marty on this item?
I've got a couple quick ones, Marty. I've had some calls and inquiries from the public about differing numbers between this week and what we approved previously, and then with the additives. I'm hoping that maybe you can kind of walk us through why the numbers are what they are and if they've changed versus what we approved prior and what we're talking about tonight, and then with the various additives. Just help us with the line item.
So when we originally approved this, so we received bids. VanCon was the low bidder and for the amount that we stated there, and we awarded that based on that amount. And the overall bid had an additive alternate option that added 2 more bays to the facility, so it accommodated our water department to be able to be in there now, so we could get it all constructed now rather than constructing some of it in a few years when we get on the site, maybe a little bit more developed. So essentially, we recommended award of the $308,000. We did not have enough budget to award the full amount. And so then we went back, did the budget amendment. Was that last week or 2 weeks ago that we did the budget amendment? So today, we're recommending to move forward on the agreement and notice to proceed for the original amount of $308,900. The next item on the agenda is the recommendation to do a change order for the additive alternate 1, which adds the additional 2 bays to that facility, which the budget amendment was approved to allow us to do that. Does that?
That helps, yeah. I think maybe was the budget amendment for a different amount because we already had some? Because that would explain the questions I've been getting. That makes sense.
So there was already a budget allocated, but we needed more to be able to accommodate the rest of this.
Yep, that's perfect. And it matches my recollection perfectly. Thanks, Marty.
Okay, welcome.
Any other questions for Marty? Okay, I'll entertain a motion on this.
Make the motion, Mayor, that we adopt Resolution 2017-14, authorizing you to sign the agreement and notice to proceed with VanCon Inc. for the construction of the Pleasant Grove City Vac Truck Decant facility located approximately 400 North, 600 West, in the amount of $308,900 and providing for an effective date.
Second. We have a motion by Ben and a second by Lynn by voice. Lynn?
Yes.
Ben?
Yes.
Sid?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Diana?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, and then the next item, D, to consider for approval, change order number 1 in the amount of $67,000 for additive alternate A for VanCon Inc. for the Pleasant Grove City Vac Truck Decant facility located at the same address.
So this is exactly what we just stated. So this is the additive alternate change order to be able to construct the entire bid package for the project.
Any questions or discussion? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Make the motion, Mayor, that we approve change order number 1 in the amount of $67,000 for additive alternate A for VanCon Inc. for Pleasant Grove City Vac Truck Decant facility located at approximately 400 North, 600 West.
Second.
We have a motion by Ben, a second by Diana. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 10 or 12E is to consider for adoption a resolution 2017-015 authorizing the mayor to sign an agreement in the amount of $399,253.20, which includes additive alternate A and notice to proceed for Any Hour Inc. for the Blackhawk Drive waterline replacement project and providing for an effective date.
Mayor, Council, again, a couple weeks ago, we recommended award to Any Hour Inc. for this project. This is just the recommendation to sign the agreement and notice to proceed to get going on this project. We have our pre-construction meeting planned next Monday for this project. So,
Any questions?
Ben, you're getting a new line.
Yeah, this will be good. Is this Blackhawk Circle and Blackhawk Drive?
yes. Starts at 15th East, all the way up Blackhawk Drive, and then up into Blackhawk Circle. And just for note, this project is not only because the water line's old, but we had a pressure deficiency in our master plans, and this fixes the pressure issue with some of the fire flows up in that area because it's so high up on the mountain. We had to do that. So that's what we're doing with this.
Any other
Mayor,
questions?
No questions, sorry. I'll make the motion.
Entertain a motion.
Make a motion for adoption of Resolution 2017-015, authorizing the mayor to sign the agreement in the amount of $399,253.20, which includes additive alternate A and notice to the proceed for Any Hour Incorporated for the Blackhawk Drive waterline replacement project and providing for effective date.
I'll second it.
We have a motion by Eric and a second by Diana by voice. Lynn?
Yes.
Ben?
Sure.
Sid?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Diana?
Yes.
Motion carries. Okay. And item 12F is to consider awarding the Lions Club Building Structural Improvements bid for is that what this is? Okay, thank you. for alternative 2 in the amount of $33,390.79 to Blue Company, and authorizing the mayor to sign the agreement and notice to proceed upon receipt and approval of final contract documents.
Mayor, Council, Dion asked me to take and present this item to you tonight. We are anxious to get moving on the Lions Club remodel that needs to happen there for the floor. In this process, in working with Dion, we went and selected 3 contractors to provide bids to the project. Due to the timing of this, we met with them last week, and one of the contractors he said he was going out of town and could not give us a bid. So we've received 2 bids on the project. Another difficulty that came in it is one of the bids, there was some misunderstanding. We gave 2 alternatives in the bid. There was an alternative 1 and an alternative 2, and we're recommending award of alternative 2. Alternative 1 was to do the entire project. It's a lump sum cost with the assuming that the floor in the Lions Center is non-reinforced. So if it's concrete without reinforcement, that's alternative 1. Alternative 2 was the bid to do it if the slab was reinforced. There's a lot more cost because it's all handwork down in underneath this building, if that is a reinforced concrete slab, to jackhammer that out and get that out of the building. We have 6 total different areas they would have to cut out and do that. So what we've done is we've received those bids. The second bidder that we've considered non-responsive had some mix-up on his bid, and it was not clear exactly what his prices were with those 2 additive alternates. We did feel that it was very clear in our process of explaining that and our contact with all of the contractors, and we felt that it was most responsible to go ahead and award this to the contractor that did give us a complete bid. The amount of that for alternative, which is for the reinforced concrete slab portion, is $33,390.79. We wanted to get a set price so that we knew where it came in if it is not reinforced. So if we get in there, they cut the slab and do the work, and they find that it's non-reinforced concrete, we know that price. It's going to be $5,000 less. It's going to be $28,071.19. And we wanted to know that up front so we knew where that fell out. We're hoping it's non-reinforced. There's no guarantees at this point. But we did feel comfortable that this contractor is qualified. He went through the whole process with us, and that he's given a good bid for this. It was within what the engineer estimated on the project, which was the engineer estimated as a non-reinforced, and he estimated between 20 and 30,000. It was very broad at that point, and so right now 28,000 is the non-reinforced cost. So we felt comfortable with the recommendation. So sorry, it's hard to talk up here with them.
You're doing awesome.
So that's what we're looking at, and what we're recommending is to move forward with the award of that project.
Any questions?
You've been coordinating with the Lions Club, and they're comfortable with this recommendation?
I'm not sure. We have not been coordinating the bid amount or that, but we have been coordinating the schedule, and they're fully aware of what we're proposing to do. This schedule, and another thing we're trying to get done is to try to have it done substantially by April 1st. So it's a very ambitious, get in there, get it done type of project. Substantial completion would be April 1st, and final completion April 15th. And that's why you're also noticing that we're authorizing the mayor to sign the agreement and notice to proceed with this approval, so that as soon as we get those documents required for the contract, this contractor can get in there and get that work done. Pretty small project in the big scope of things, but it'll be great to get this thing done as fast as possible.
Any other questions?
Was this in, which budget is this coming out of?
Not mine.
We did a budget amendment recently.
We did make a budget amendment.
Yeah.
Capital improvement.
And
Capital project.
Capital projects fund.
We've double checked all of the budget numbers, and we have budget to complete it with what we're recommending for award here.
Any other questions? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, Council, I'll move that we award the Lions Club Building Structural Improvements bid for Alternative 2 in the amount of $33,390.79 to Blue Company, and authorizing the mayor to sign the agreement and notice to proceed upon receipt and approval of the final contract documents.
Second.
We have a motion by Ben, a second by Lynn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Let's take a 5-minute potty break, and we'll come back and start in on 13A. Note that it's 7:20 p.m.
Now, what is that new one? Peanut butter of some sort?
To call us back to order. All right, so we're going to move on item 13A. This is a discussion and direction regarding our road funding. We had given some assignments to staff last week, and we've also received a citizens initiative in the interim.
Yep.
So I'm going to let Scott go ahead and brief us on this, and then we'll have some discussion.
Thank you, Mayor. As we talked last week, I had a spreadsheet that had 9 different scenarios on ways that we could do road funding. The council wanted to see a couple different other scenarios, numbers that would kind of do things maybe a little bit of a different way, just so you had a snapshot as to what that meant. So this, what I call scenario 1 up here, and I don't know, Ken, can you get the light? Scenario 1 is really our baseline. This is the funding that we are already receiving or will receive with a Class C revenue of about $1 million a year, $180,000 in additional gas tax, and then right now in our general fund base budget we have $325,000 earmarked for roads. We do have a bond payment in fiscal year 18. It's a partial payment, but that's our last payment on a road bond that we did 10 years ago. And so this is a budget number. Now, one of the questions we've been asked is how come these numbers don't necessarily tie back into our 3-year road plan? Well, the road plan that we put together and the funding that goes with that, part of it is the money we receive each year, but we also had some reserve money that we've been using. And then if we had a project in a previous year that got pushed to the next year, then that project's been moved over. So in some cases, we're going to spend more than $948,000, I believe, in fiscal year 18 on our roads. And that's because of that situation. So anyway, when I pull this up again, this is our baseline. If we did nothing, so no new general fund money, no new road fee, we'd be at $1.5 million a year of funding. Of course, our goal to get all of our roads in 20 years up to a PCI index of 70 or greater, which is considered very good or greater, we need $3.8 million, and we need that for 20 years. I mean, that's a lot of money over time to get our roads back in that position. So one of the things that was requested was give us the scenario if we were fully funded in 2019, and this is if we just averaged our commercial into one rate. So we had an initial study done, and it broke down the commercial via trips. And I'll show you the next one here, which breaks it up via trips. But this is an average monthly bill that each commercial business in our community would pay. So if we have the $1.18 million with the Class C revenue gas tax, our base budget of $325, our gap then becomes $230,000 of new revenue that we need. Sorry, $2.3 million. I think I made that mistake last time. And maybe it's just wishful thinking, but we need $2.3 million. What that equates to for our residential per month would be $11.27, and for our businesses it'd be $138.46 for each business. So if the city council were to implement that tomorrow, then we would be having an additional $2.3 million going into roads, which would get us to the 3.8. So that was one of the things that was requested to give you that snapshot. Also what was requested is if we do the same thing, but we break down the commercial via trips. So this was done in our initial study. So nothing really changes here other than we're still generating $2.3 million worth of revenue. Our residential stays the same at 11.27. But then if you have a business that is generating less than 2 trips, it's $46.69 a month. If it's 2 to 4 trips, they're paying $138 a month. 4 to 20 trips, those businesses are paying $431 a month. And if there's a business that's generating over 20 trips, it's $1,132. So one of the questions that was asked, and this is if we fully funded tomorrow in order to get that done. One of the questions that was asked is if we take this group
and we move them down into this group. So anything really 4 or more trips, we charge the $431.94. Then that reduces over the on this, it would reduce it by about $75,000. I know that's kind of the fine print there, but this has been asked a couple times. That number's, I mean, all these numbers are pretty big. That's a huge number, you know, $1,100 a month for a business to pay for a road fee. And so the question was asked is if we do that. Well, if we do that, we don't generate $3.8 million. We come in at probably $3.725 is what that does, is if we just, because there's 9, according to our research, there's 9 businesses that fall into this category. So if they were paying $431.94 instead of $1,132, that's the difference of revenue lost over the course of a year. So that's what it looks like if we break it down into trips. And I hope I captured this, Ben, the way that you were looking. This was scenario 7 on our research last week. And I believe, Ben, you were looking at fully funding it by fiscal year 19. And so what scenario 7 said is for every $100,000 of general fund money, there would be $250,000 of road fee. And so this was kind of proportionate, carried out over time. Is that what was being asked? And so when you add it all up, if we were to get to $3.8 million in fiscal year 19 and just do this all at once, the city would need to put an additional $650,000 of general fund money. The road fee would equate to $1.625 million. That would be $8 a month for the residents. And then when you average out the businesses, and I didn't figure that out by trips, but just averaging the businesses, it's $39.13 a month. So this shows, again, another way, just under 3.8. I wanted to kind of keep the numbers a little bit round. So that's just under 3.8. This is the number. The $650,000 would be a discussion that we need to have as to where that money would come from in order to fund this. Is that, I hope I captured that correctly. That's what I thought I was doing.
And that would have to be annual, Ben?
Yeah, that would have to be an annual injection from the general fund.
Well, oh, sorry, yes. So that's exactly right. Once the 650 was dedicated, this would roll into the general fund base budget to where our base budget moving forward in fiscal year 20 would be $975,000. This is not one-time money. That would need to be money that would need to roll each year. We don't have to go find $650,000 of new money each year, but once it's rolled into the base budget, then it's not money that's coming back for other things. So thank you for clarifying that. One of the things that was asked is if we could step it in over time on a scenario. So scenario 9 was one of the scenarios where that was being proposed that would put a little bit more onus on the residential and a little less on the commercial. And what this does, and this would be with $25,000 of general fund new money each year. So each year in the budgeting process, when we look at our new revenues, I think Denise gave us a number of $350,000 for this upcoming fiscal year. We would take $25,000 off the top, put it towards roads, and then the rest of the money would go for other general fund needs. So if we did that every year, over time, it would build into a base budget additional general fund money. So in fiscal year 23, it'd be $450,000. And what was asked by the council is how can we reach our 3.8 by fiscal year 23? And so this shows what the numbers would be, because this is what the road fee would need to reflect. So this is what would be implemented in 2018. That would be with a 5% annual increase. And I keep saying this, and I just want to make sure that this is understood. This is not a guaranteed deal. This is not a guaranteed deal. This is a roadmap that each city council every year would have to say we're going to do this. So this again just shows in a situation where this could happen, the city council today can't say we want 5% increases for the next 6 years. They can't bind future councils in that manner. What they could control is what this is. And then when we have our budget and planning for the next year, then it would be proposed that this goes in and this goes in, and then the city council would make a decision independent on that. So under this case, then this shows that the residential will be $10.85 a month, and then the road fee averaged out again for the commercial side of things would start at $63.21. These would be the 5% increases here. This would be the additional general fund money. So that in fiscal year 23, we're going to be at 3.8 million. So again, that's another way to do it. One of the other things that was asked is taking a look at just implementing a $1 million road fee and not putting in any more additional general fund money, just keeping that at 325, and then having a 5% increase on that road fee and breaking it down per trip on our commercial. So the residential's at 490 at 5% increases. By fiscal year 23, the residents are paying $6.25. For the businesses, based on how many trips are coming out, if you add 5% to each of those, by the end of fiscal year 23, we're at $25 for the less than 2 trips, up to those businesses that are more than 20 trips would be at $628.44 a month. So that equals a $1.2 million road fee. With the other funding that's in place at the end of fiscal year 23, we'd have $2.78 million. So again, that's a little bit of a snapshot that shows you one of the scenarios. And just a reminder again that if we took this group and charged them what this is, for every $1 million generated here, we would reduce that by $33,200. Again.
Say that again.
If we took all the businesses, the 9 of them that are over 20 trips, instead of charging them $492.40, we charge them $187.80. I just take the difference in that number and I multiply it by 9, which is the number of businesses, and again by 12, which is the months in a year. And that means that there'd be $33,200 less than what these numbers show here.
And $1 million shy of fully funding roads.
Yeah, this doesn't fully fund it. This again is just a snapshot if we went with $1 million and we didn't put anything in out of the general fund.
Would it be possible, Scott, to rather than just eliminating that category, adjust the others to compensate for that?
Yeah, and as I was putting this together, I had that very thought, and the calculations were going to get a little extreme for me to, because most of the spreadsheet that generates all of this is given to us by our consultants. And so most of the work I can figure out just using the round numbers and kind of percentages. But to do that very thing would take a little bit more analysis. But yes, in order to make that number whole, or to go back to this one and make this number whole, and maybe changing these slightly, or maybe even changing the residential slightly, that's all possible in order to capture that 75,000. I don't have that number tonight, and I could figure it out in the meantime. It would be pretty slight as far as things are considered, the additional 75,000.
But does that move away from the formula?
Not if we do it across the board.
Okay.
So any questions on the numbers or any other things that you want me to look at and put into a...
Is that all of them?
That's all that I was asked to do, yep.
What's the red thing below?
Oh, that's just the... I just scrolled back.
Ah, okay.
And so now these are in your Dropbox for your future reference. If you need me to print you hard copies, I can do that as well.
Okay. Let's gel on that for a few minutes. You want to introduce this other subject?
So on...
Another way of funding roads.
Yes. On Wednesday, we received a citizen initiative. And this is, at least in my experience, this is the first one I've ever dealt with, so I wasn't super familiar with what the rules are and what that means. So I asked Tina to do you want to explain the high points, or do you want me to just cover it? All right, I'll cover it. I've read through this a few times. So what it is residents of Pleasant Grove City, and really any city in the state, have an ability to create an ordinance and have that ordinance voted on by the public of Pleasant Grove City. And so what we received on Wednesday was an ordinance that says, here's what we want you to do. And Jacob read the ordinance for those that were here at the start of the meeting, reviewed the ordinance, which in essence says, what we want the city to do is you need to fund the roads first. So you take $2.3 million off the top. That goes towards roads. And then the rest of the general fund money you have to figure out. And this is going to be on a yearly basis. And it states in there that if the city wanted to increase fees or taxes or something else in order to fund other services that might be lacking, then the city can do that. But in essence, the roads are funded first. Is that a fair summary? I want to make sure I do it justice as to. Yeah. Yeah, thank you. So yeah, the ordinance is 2.625, and I'm assuming that's already accounting for the 325 that's already in the base budget. So for the city, that would not be a reduction because that money's already there. So the 2.3 million is what's at question and what's not currently funded as far as that's concerned. So when I refer to 2.3 million, I'm just talking about the gap that is currently not funded in the general fund. And did you say 4 million? What was the? Okay. Yeah. Oh, okay. Okay, that's a little better explanation because I was kind of assuming this is how they were looking at it. So, okay, so once we receive this, we have 3 days for our city recorder to accept the petition for the initiative, to review it, make sure things are in place as far as she's concerned, and then we have 3 days to give it to our finance officer. So we received this on Wednesday. We had to figure out what the process was, and so I think we did that on Thursday. And so then on Friday, Kathy walked across the office and took this and gave it to Denise. And so now we as a city have 25 days from that time, from last Friday. If you're counting backwards from today, we have now 21 days to come up with a fiscal response. I have this written down. There's certain criteria that if this is going to be an increase or a decrease in taxes, what's being requested is just what's currently funded in the general fund, so I don't think it is an increase or a decrease in taxes. The dollar amount of the cost, which we know what that number is, 2.625 million per the ordinance. We do have to address whether this changes anything with our bonding, which we're still looking at this, so I'm just going to kind of give you an idea. But we do have a couple bonds that are not, they are paid for out of different funds, but we use a backstop of general fund money in case those other funds aren't available. So for instance, Pleasant Grove Boulevard, when that was built, was a bond. The intent of that was to use future road impact fees to make that yearly payment. In 2010 and 2011, when our road impact fees were next to nothing because there was no development, then we had to dip out of the general fund to make those bond payments. Now our road impact fees are back up and they're covering the cost of that bond. But we do use the general fund as a backstop for that. So how that fits into that, that's something we're working on as far as staff. But one of the things that it says is it's a listing of all sources of funding with associated list of all sources of funding with associated cost, each source and percentage. And so as we read this, what this tells us is we need to now do an analysis of what $2.3 million out of the general fund going directly to roads, what that looks like. And so that's a $2.3 million reduction in the rest of the services that we provide. And so that's an exercise that we as staff are going to start doing some analysis to look at our services and what the services cost. And we'll break down the service by just specific things. Here's, swimming pool is a service. Certain ththings are service. Everything we do is service orientated. So we'll list all the services. And then we'll have and Denise is going to be she's going to be busy the next couple weeks, working with the department heads to ascertain what the cost of services are and really how many employees it takes to provide that service. And so we'll create a list for the city council. Now the reason we're doing it by service is we've already done that. We did this analysis in 2011, and then we did it again a couple years ago. where we went through and looked at the services and what the cost was. And so because we already have a lot of those numbers in place and a roadmap on how to do that, we're going to use that same methodology to do this. And then eventually, and we'll have to figure out the method of doing this, is we need to give the council a list, and then the council is going to have to look at that list and say, okay, here's how we're going to carve out the 2.3 million. And then once we have that carved out, now we have a response to show our residents or whoever that this is what 2.3 million out of the general fund looks like. So I'm hoping by March 21st. So
Scott, that's called the fiscal impact?
Yeah. So this is, in essence, if somebody files a citizen initiative, the law says that we need to show what the fiscal impact is to our community. And so we will do that through this process. So I'm hoping by May 21st, we're kind of settled in as to where
March
that 2.3 million is
21st.
going to come. Or sorry, March 21st.
21st.
250,000, not 2.5 million. I think I've talked about this a lot the last couple days, and everything's jumbled up here. But so by March 21st, so that if once we decide what the 2.3 looks like, then we have a little time, because at that point we have to write a summary statement with 100 words or less. And what the summary statement is going to do, it's going to be on a piece of paper that for people that have filed for the initiative, they have to go out and get
1,636 signatures.
1,636 signatures. And in order for somebody to be qualified to sign, it's people that have voted in the last presidential election or the last three.
So the number is the percentage of people.
You grab your
who
mic.
Sorry.
Thanks.
The 1,636 is derived by counting the percentage of people that voted in the last presidential election of registered voters in Utah, in Pleasant Grove, sorry. In order to be qualified to sign the petition, you have to have voted, be a registered voter and have voted, I believe, in the last three general elections.
Okay. So there's a criteria for those that are going to sign. So the people filing the petition are the ones that are going to go out and get the signatures. But we as a city, as far as this fiscal note is talked about, we have to summarize that in 100 words or less. In essence, it's going to be on that page, on that paper that people are going to sign. And so when people are signing the paper, they're signing saying that we're okay to have this on the ballot. If they get the 1,600 and whatever signatures, it doesn't mean this automatically happens. It just means it's now going to go on a ballot for the public to vote on. So we have to figure out what the fiscal impact is and break that down. And then once we know what the fiscal impact is, we have to write the summary statement from that analysis that's going to go on this page that's going to eventually be circulated for people to sign. And now there's time requirements. To our understanding, they need to have, in order to be on the general election ballot for November, they need to have all the signatures in by April 15th of this year. If they don't get them by April 15th, they have 316 days in which to get the signatures. And then at that point it goes, and this is our understanding, it goes on to the next municipal election. So that would kick it to November of 2019. And I don't know if that's a little bit different with what you guys have researched, Jacob, but that's our understanding as to how that works. So that's the process. I forgot to mention that the petition needed to be signed by 5 members, and Jacob mentioned that. There are 5 members of our community that have signed the petition. They have to be Pleasant Grove citizens and registered voters. And so I think, have we verified all that, Kathy? I believe we've. Okay, so we've sent it to the county. County verifies, and then they let us know. So we're in process. We're in process now of Denise and I are meeting together tomorrow to discuss all the different services, and then we'll go back to the department heads and break this down. And it's not going to be dollar for dollar, but it's going to be as close as we can get it, coming up with this analysis in 2 weeks' time to really give the council a snapshot. And then the council is going to have the difficult procedure of going through that and saying, if this initiative passes, here's the services that are going to have to be eliminated or reduced in order to do that.
Or funded some other way.
Or funded some other way. And that's for the council to decide. The ordinance says it has to come out of the general fund. And so if it's coming out of the general fund, then this is happening. Now, if the council says, all right, we're going to take the 2.3 and that's going to go into the general fund, and we're going to turn around and raise property taxes for the 2.3 to make sure everything else stays whole, or that we're going to turn around and do a road fee to make sure everything else stays whole, that's the decision making that you guys have in front of you. But for the time being, we need to show what $2.3 million looks like, and then the council can come back on the back end and say, you know, we need to raise revenues to do this or that. But the ordinance as written does not give you the flexibility to say we want to do this a different way as far as how the general fund's used. It says you have to use the funds in that manner.
So that's my question, for you, Scott or Tina, about binding future councils.
So, go ahead, Tina. We've had this discussion.
So there is a state statute which prohibits binding future councils with regard to budgetary things. We have to be able to maintain that legislative authority for each council as it considers the budget every year. So this ordinance may be problematic in that regard. I'm still doing some research to determine whether or not this would be a legal ordinance to adopt. I have spoken with Justin Lee at the Attorney General's office. He's rendered an opinion, and I'm still doing some further research on that. I'm not prepared to give you a legal determination at this point, but it is a concern that we will be researching and have an answer for you before you need to look at the ordinance to decide whether you want to adopt it or not. The question is, the way the ordinance is written, it would mandate future councils in perpetuity, unless they took other action, to put that $2.625 million out of general fund money in the special revenue roads first special revenue account that would be created pursuant to the ordinance. That's problematic because your legislative authority over the budget cannot be bound in the future like that.
Cannot bind a future council.
Right. You can bind yourselves, but you can't bind a future council.
Yeah, and the equivalent to that is the city council saying we're adopting this 6-year plan, and that every future council doesn't have a choice. They have to follow the plan, and you don't have the power to do that. And so if our residents are going to vote on an ordinance that says that we have to do that, there could be a legal question with that, and that's what Tina's researching.
Okay. What's the process if this, let's say that it is found to be legal and the signatures are gathered, what's the process after that?
Once the signatures are gathered, believe they're sent to the county, and the county has a turnaround time that they have to verify that they have enough signatures to have this go on the ballot. Before it goes on the ballot, it does come in front of the city council, and the city council at that point has 3 options. One, you can just say, hey, this doesn't need to go to the ballot. We as a body are going to enact this ordinance and just choose to do that. Or you can say, we're going to enact this ordinance, but we still want the public to vote on it. And so we're going to start and we're going to enact it, and then the public is going to have an opportunity to vote yes or no. The third option is you can reject the ordinance and say we as a city council are not implementing it, and that automatically kicks it to the ballot.
And then
per vote.
After it's voted on, assuming that it's adopted by the public, what's the process?
So we're unclear on, let's say if it were to be on in November and it was adopted by our residents, it's unclear whether that starts right away or whether that's something that would just be in our next fiscal budget year. So our fiscal year budget 19, as we put that together, that's how the council would have to start. So.
And is there a legal action, like normally when an ordinance is enacted, there has to be a action taken?
Well, right. So if the initiative is approved by the voters, then we would place the ordinance on an agenda. You would take formal action to adopt the ordinance. what Scott's saying is we adopt our budgets from July 1 to June 30th. We would be in the middle of the 2018 budget. So more than likely, even if we adopted the ordinance in November 15th, say after the election, the money really wouldn't be appropriated until the next budget year. That's what we believe at this
July
point.
1.
Right.
Okay. Okay. Anything else, Scott?
No.
Okay.
So that's the process as we understand it. So, I mean, I'll answer questions, feedback, or I know that you had questions for others, so you just tell me when you want me up here and when you want me to.
Sure.
stand,
Why don't
so.
you hang there and
Okay.
Jacob hang close by the mic just in case. Okay. What questions do we have? There's 5 proposals or 5 scenarios that have been presented. One is a fully fund on year 1. What is a fully fund on year 1, which general fund puts in an additional $650K. Another one is step it in over time, adding 25,000, compounding it every year, and then the rest goes into a road fee. Another scenario is not fully funded. That raised the 2.78 million or 2.8 million. And then the citizen initiative, which would be to fund it first and then deal with the other services that might be affected somehow, either through cuts or by raising revenue for those. What are your comments? So one of the goals tonight would be to give staff direction so that by next week we understand how we're going to prioritize the information that has to be presented in this 100-word summary. So you're working on the detail behind the 100-word
Yeah,
summary.
so for next week, it is a work session, and it's a budget work session. We're going to be spending most of our time on our fiscal year 18 budget. We won't have much new information because we just won't be ready for it next week. So what I'm looking for from the council and what's been presented is if there's something that you feel you want to proceed on, and we want to start engaging the public and sending out information and having a public hearing or an open house or something to get in front of them to react to, and that timeline's up to you on how quick you want to do this. We can implement the fee at any time. It does not have to coincide with our fiscal year budget. So once the council's ready to go through the process and how quickly you want it, or quickly or slowly you want to work through the process, again, that's up to you on how you want to do that. But once we settle on this, then I would assume that we would want to do some public outreach and start educating people on what the council's thinking anyway.
All right, questions for, where'd you go, Jacob? Buddy?
Yes.
Okay.
Jacob.
Yes.
Mr. Zons.
Eric, we're on the same board, everyone, so.
When you created this, I think the one question was already resolved. You put it at 2.625, and the 325,000 was already coming out of general fund. Is that correct? Have you done research, or have you put anywhere online anything of showing what this is going to affect? Because last week I went on record to show what a modest $2 million out of our general fund would do, and how it would affect our general fund. About, what are we going, 12.5, 12.6? Okay, so 12.5. I went on record and shared that how it would bring our city to its knees. We're talking about the library, parks, rec, senior center, other services that our 110 employees provide to this service. Now you can subtract, if you want, our public safety. If you consider that your core services are not touchable, then that brings it down to, someone would have to help me, 50, 60 employees that you're subtracting now 24 plus employees out of. Have you done any research of how that will bring our city to its knees?
Well, I appreciate that question. Actually, a similar question was brought to me by Sid this morning, and so I had some time to think about that. Let me give you my perspective on this initiative. I kind of looked at the city and tried to figure out who it is that wants the roads funded. You know, who are these groups? And I found 3 groups when I was doing that little analysis. So the first group They want fully funded roads. And they want innovative budgeting to find additional funds. They don't want taxes raised. And they're okay with services being cut. So that's one group of people out there. I'm not part of that group. The second group of people, they want roads to be fully funded all the way to the $4 million or $3.8 million mark, $4 million mark. They want innovative budgeting to find additional funds. They're okay with raising taxes for roads. They're okay for raising taxes for services if it's needed. They're okay with raising fees if it's needed. They don't want their services cut. I'm in that group. Then there's the third group. Fully fund roads. They don't want to reduce any budgets. They want to raise taxes and fees for the road specifically, and they don't want to cut services. So those were the three groups I kind of looked at. So me being the second group, I want the roads to be fully funded.
Yeah.
So I'm looking for innovative ways to find. I actually proposed one last year. It was a 50-50. It didn't actually get us to the $3.8 million mark, but $1 million from a fee, $1 million from the budget somewhere, which really would only be 600 and.
It'd be close to what Ben's proposing on his.
Yeah, and that would have been the 1 million. Yeah, yes, it would have been very close to what Ben was proposing. So for me, if I would say 600,000, I think we could find $600,000 in the budget.
Do you have those proposals tonight that you
I do not have those proposals.
Okay. This is just me, Jake. I just would think if you're going to come forward with a citizens initiative that's going to bring our city to its knees, that you would have some of those. I'm not trying to be rude or anything. I'm just saying I would
have
think.
to disagree with you wholeheartedly that it would bring the city to its knees because only one group wants to actually cut services. And they're a pretty small group. The other two groups that I've described are willing to pay more, but what we want is to pay a fee or a tax or do innovative budgeting to pay for the other services so that the roads are funded first.
So when you say innovative, talk to me.
I
mean, it is what it is.
Ben has, over the past year, has given quite a few instances. For instance, there was someone who was going to be hired, I think it was in the legal department, and to postpone that hiring for a year, put the extra money into the roads fund, and then our budget should be increased by then, and then you could eventually hire that person. So do some work on there. Make something more efficient. For instance, there may be needs for changing employees if they're not as efficient as we need them to be. You know, finding someone who's more efficient at their job, having them do additional work. You know.
So according to your initiative, 2.3 million, it is what it is, right?
It is. You're going to take it directly from the general fund, give it to the roads.
So that's what last week when I was telling you that 2 million brought the cities to its knees, right? So there's nothing in your there's nothing in your initiative.
Well, it says Pleasant Grove City is, let's see, no portion of the transfer. Let's see, hold on. Nothing in this section prohibits Pleasant Grove City from proposing or pursuing tax increases or other means to further to fund other priorities in the city. So you can raise taxes, you can raise fees, you can do any type of budgeting you want. If you want to fire people, that's fine. You can do that if you want.
Well, it's not what we want. It's what this is your initiative, right? This is what you're basically forcing upon us as a council and mayor.
Well, to be respectful, Eric, I do believe you're misunderstanding what the initiative is.
I've read the initiative many, many times, and $2.3 million in my mind out of a 12.5 general fund is what it is. It's affecting levels of services that we only have 110 employees, and if you take half of those out because they're public safety, you're really affecting the levels of services that the city provides. There's no hiding from that, Jacob.
Well, it's interesting that you're saying that this initiative would cause people to lose their jobs. That's utterly false.
I would disagree with you wholeheartedly.
That's right
on that.
here. If you want to read it again.
I don't need to. I've read it many, many times.
Nothing in this section prohibits Pleasant Grove City from proposing or pursuing tax increases or other means to fund other priorities in the city. You have, as a council, tools at your hand. You can implement a fee or a tax, just like you're doing now with the roads.
But you're taking away what we already have as a general fund and then placing upon us a burden to do that. I tell you what, I'm going to go on record right now as a city council member, Eric Jensen, that I am wholeheartedly against this initiative, citizens initiative, because of the harm it's going to do to our city. And if any others want to go on record and when we say man up and show it, then please feel free. Because when I look at this and I hear fluff words, innovative and outsourcing and things like that, that's what they are to me.
Well, if you want to hear the actual words, then the meat of it is you as a city council can decide to increase taxes and to implement fees to all of the citizens, but for the other services.
How do you think that's going to go with when we ask citizens, hey, we just had to cut $2.3 million out of our budget because we were forced to put that very first, and then we had to come to realize that, hey, this means this to our city. This means this amount of level services are going to have to be cut. So now we have to turn around and raise property taxes or whatever else, right?
Sure.
That's what you're doing to us.
That's exactly what we're doing here. We're forcing you to pay for the roads first, our highest and top priority as a city. Of the
I think you don't have any argument if any of us is saying roads are a priority on this county. I just don't. I think we'd all agree. So I have one last question for you, Jacob.
Go ahead, Eric.
Do you feel this way? Does Carl Cunha feel this way? Dean Hell, Nathan Stoker, and Blaine Thatcher and Wendy Morgan all feel the exact same way on this?
No, they don't feel the same way. There's 3 different groups in the city. We fall into the first 2 groups that I described. There are some of us who signed the petition or the initiative who believe that cutting services is appropriate and needs to happen, and they don't want increased taxes.
So all of you fall in the first 2 groups.
All of us fall in the first 2 groups. None of us fall in the third group, which is to fund the roads through an additional tax or fee.
Okay, thank you. I'm done.
Okay, let me see if I'm understanding what you meant. On the one hand, the council has started to discuss raising a road fee or creating a road fee in order to fund the roads. And what I think I hear you saying is raise a fee to fund other services that are already funded and take the money and use it on roads. So either way, you're saying, okay, 2.3 million, have at it, but don't call it a road fee. Go raise funds for the other services, not the roads.
Well, as the citizen and as the primary sponsor, I personally would like to see the city delve deeper into their budgets and find ways to. But once they've done that, and they feel prepared to come to the citizens of Pleasant Grove and ask for money for the other services, I will wholeheartedly support any tax that they would like to implement.
So
as long as it goes on the ballot.
Correctly?
So I
Did
think so, yeah.
Describe it correctly? Okay. Just don't call it a fee for roads. Call it something else.
As long as you put in there as well that it's not just about the fee, it's about allowing the city time to, or essentially forcing the city to look into their budget.
Okay.
They won't have to I personally don't think they will need to have a fee of $2.3 million for all of the other city
Something
services.
smaller.
Yeah, something smaller.
So the first group is no new fee, period. The second group would be something smaller than 2.3.
Yes.
And the third group is, fix the roads and raise the full amount.
That's right.
Okay. I think I understand that. Other questions?
I have a couple. So I'm hung up, very hard to understand how we have a service now and you want us to discontinue it and come back and raise. So let's talk the pool, something that I voted for. So we shut down the pool, but then we vote again on the pool?
Well, you've already funded the pool this year, right?
No, so this is concurrently for many years.
Well, first of all, going back to the idea that this doesn't bind any council ever. Like, even though this citizen initiative may pass, the next day you could get rid of the ordinance that we create. So you're never actually bound to it, from my understanding of the law.
That's true, except that any action taken by the council would then be subject to referendum, which I assume the group that supports the initiative would then try to refer any action by the council to undo the ordinance. And correct, if you referred, if it's a referendum, then it stays the council action during the pendency of the referendum. An initiative, it doesn't. We can continue to budget and continue to operate the city while the initiative is pending, until it gets on the ballot and is passed. But vice versa, if the council was to rescind the ordinance after it was on the ballot or modify it in some way, then it would be subject to the referral process, which then would stay any options for this council to continue to fund those services during the pendency. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's
I
an
also
immediate-
can't speak to a referendum in that situation. I hope.
So it's an immediate,
Subjective.
it would take effect immediately, and then there'd be this referendum, et cetera, that would happen. Okay. Or a challenge, or whichever way it went.
So my question here is, if I already voted for the pool, is that, like, we can literally shut the doors of the pool even though it was voted for?
So the vote on the pool was for a general fund bond, a general obligation bond to build the pool. That bond has since been paid off.
I know, but the citizens voted for it. Okay, so let's use the rec center.
Well, the citizens voted for the capital cost of it, which is now paid.
Okay. So we would shut the doors to the pool.
So if we shut the doors to the pool, because the pool generates revenue, it just doesn't generate enough to cover its full cost.
So we shut down 3/4 of it.
Well,
Hang with me.
the council has options, and I think this is part of what they're saying is, at that point, if we have a $180,000 general fund transfer to make sure that our pool can keep running, either the city can raise the rates of the fee to cover that gap, that $180,000, or we can say we're going to continue to move that money over, and because we want to keep that service, or we say, you know what, we don't have the 180 anymore, and so now we're shutting the swim pool down. And so those are the choices that eventually have to be made through this process as we go through it. And I mean, we've looked at the fees, and the fees
Are where the
well, and we
fair market
they're not
value.
in a bubble. I mean,
Right.
we are competing against other places, and if the fees go up too high, nobody's going to come anyway, and then the pool will be shut down. And so those are all the things that, and we haven't done the full research on that. All we know is what our general fund transfer is. And so when we look at the services that are out there, that will be one of the things on the list. Swimming pool with the cost to the general fund for the council to consider if that's going to be part of the 2.3 million or not.
Okay, so let's change then the
Okay,
conversation.
rec center now.
Rec center.
Yes.
So I voted for the rec center.
Yes.
And I know this is putting me in a box for all of you people. So if, and I don't remember, what was the final vote count for the rec center? 70,
It's like
30?
62%.
No, it was like 60 something.
Okay. So 60% of the population voted for it. Does that protect it from being cut? No.
So yeah, that's a general fund, that's a general obligation bond that we have, and we have to pay that regardless of whether the rec center's open or not. And so when we look at the cost of our rec center, we have our operations cost, which we have to use a little bit of general fund money to make sure that we can keep the operations. The capital cost that's part of the general obligation bond is paid out of a different fund than the general fund.
You
Is
would
that
have a
correct?
rec center, but
So
no one
that's
inside it.
restricted.
Or is that coming out of the general fund?
The actual bond money you're getting from the citizens through a property tax, so that comes into the debt service fund to service the debt.
Okay.
So you're going to still have the debt on the recreation center, regardless if there's people in it or not in it. You're still going to service the debt from the property. The citizens of Pleasant Grove will continue to pay property tax to service that debt until the bond's paid off.
So then at that point, Denise, are we talking about things that happen inside the rec center, including equipment, programs, operational costs, or the things that
Right,
could be cut at that
right.
point?
Not the debt service, just everything that's going on inside the building.
Operations.
Yeah.
Okay.
So before we go too much further down the road, let's talk about the exercise that is required because there's an initiative in front of us, and we have the 100-word summary of the detail, right? So we have this detail that we need to come up with, and we need to provide some direction to the staff on what direction that detail goes in. So the actual decision as to where the impacts would hit the general fund is a function of the city council prioritizing the services, which the city council did
Yes.
2 years ago. And I believe it was done by a prior city council in
Well, we
2011.
went through a process in 2011. We do the process every year.
Every
I mean,
year.
the general fund money at any given time could be spent in many different ways.
Right.
So through the budgeting process every year, the council looks at this and says, we want to continue to fund these things at this level.
Right.
And so it really is a yearly process.
Right.
that we go
It's
through.
yearly. As far as looking at it this way,
At this detail, no. we
at
don't
this
do that.
level of detail, and identifying where the 2.3 million would likely come from, and if there's going to be a corresponding revenue created some way through a tax or a fee to not have those impacted, the council would need to go into a more in-depth analysis of priorities
Yes.
on services that are being offered. So you're going to, whatever the current obligations are from a debt standpoint or external,
removed.
those have to continue to be met. And so the 2.3 million has to come from something less than what is the general fund now. So whatever the general fund is funding, you can't touch things that are already obligated for whatever years they're obligated. And we don't know what that is right now. I mean, tonight.
No,
We
you'll
will
have
know-
that in a
We
couple
will
weeks,
have
yeah.
that in a
Uh-huh.
week or two when the staff has time. But we need to tell them what level of detail are we looking at to go to so that these questions that everyone has, is it going to affect parks? Is it going to affect police? Is it going to affect library, fire, down the road? That's funny. We're talking about roads.
No pun intended.
What services that citizens receive today in prioritized order would likely be affected by the $2.3 million shift. And the reason that's important is that becomes the backup for the summary that gets published. And once that's put in, that's not changeable. That continues through the life of this particular initiative. That's the response where you have to give
It goes into
fiscal
the voter,
impact
It goes into the voter information.
and the voter information
pamphlet.
pamphlet. So this is the council's opportunity to identify to the citizens what the impact of this initiative would be to their services that they're receiving. And so that's kind of our assignment, is to define for the staff how to proceed in prioritizing these things so that we do know what's affected.
So, and I've gone through that scenario, of course, in my head as to what that number represents in our budget. I do remember last week Ben saying the innovative budgeting, so I would be anxious to hear I would be anxious to understand what innovative budgeting means, because that could alter then what we determine as a service that needs to be cut.
Right. One of the things that I talked to Scott about last week and that we discussed as an option to bring up here and to see if there was an appetite for is different ways to minimize the pain of these kind of budget adjustments that the public keeps asking for. One of the suggestions, for example, was I've never gone to St. George to see Utah League of Cities and Towns because there's a training opportunity in Salt Lake City that doesn't require an overnight stay. And if we put a moratorium across our city on overnight stays for travel, we wouldn't lose training opportunities because there are local options. But we would say, we're not going to do overnight travel. We're going to find, or at least we're going to put another layer of approvals before we authorize some specific overnight travel. And so my recommendation to Scott was, can we get a dollar figure of what that would save us if we were to put some kind of a new restriction on overnight travel for training? We can't stay at a resort in St. George. We have to go to the Salt Lake option for Utah League of Cities and Towns.
What about ICSC then?
Yeah,
When you took
kind
that
of
trip
thing.
last year?
Right, ICSC, those kinds of options would be off the table without some other level of approval to try to encourage less spending throughout the city, all employees. And Scott said that's the kind of thing we can get a number to. It would be an involved project to figure out what that travel allotment is across the city. So let's get the whole council on board with that kind of research. I hope that we are willing to see what that number is. not even committing to do it, but just finding out what that number would be to cut out travel like that. One of the things I hear about from the public a lot is the idea of free rec center passes for employees and volunteers and families. What's the dollar value of that kind of a perk? We ought to assess the dollar value of it and say, this is what that would mean. This could generate some of the savings that the public's insisting that we look for. And there's a lot of different categories like that, assessing fees, making sure we're at the maximum Pareto efficiency on what our fee rate structures are with the golf course, with the rec center, with the pool, with all kinds of programs or user fees could be implemented in greater extent across the city without impacting levels of service and potentially helping us achieve the goal that the public's looking for in an innovative way, I would call it. So I've identified several in writing over the last week and published a piece that listed a number of my thoughts on what we should do as kind of first steps to make sure that we implement a change in the least painful way possible. And would love to have support from this body to say, yeah, let's run those numbers, let's figure that out. If we're going to have to prepare a fiscal impact statement anyway, let's prepare a fiscal impact statement that is as least painful to the city as possible so that we can figure out, really, we could probably go to the public and ask for 1.5 million in some fee or something like that, rather than 2.3 if we implement every one of these proposals that are not going to impact services. But it does involve, I mean, to really get thoroughly exploring all the possibilities and really innovative. One of the things I've proposed for several years is a citizen budget committee. A citizens budget committee would be a very effective tool to help us assess some of that innovative approach. That's been opposed every time I've proposed it, but modified zero-based budgeting is another thing I've proposed every year since I have been an elected officer serving in this seat. I have proposed a zero-based budgeting in a modified form like other cities implement as one possible way to help us get to the bottom of what innovative budgeting might look like for our city in a way that would help us get there without any pain. So there's lots of options to explore. And what I'm looking for is shared sacrifice. I'm looking for ideas. What I've been talking about is the possibility of figuring out a way to get there that does fund our roads first. So I think the citizen initiative in many ways makes some sense for encouraging an activity. And if it's what the public wants, I support, I guess in the words of Teddy Roosevelt, I support the initiative and referendum effort to not destroy representative government, but to correct representative government when it becomes misrepresentative. That's sort of what Roosevelt thought was the whole point of the referendum and initiative processes. I think they're reasonable processes. We certainly should enshrine the authority of the public to make the decisions. So I like that. I like the idea that we would go through and do some tough budgeting, and the things that I have proposed in writing on many, many occasions include things like assessing what our overnight travel expenses look like, assessing what some of our perks are, you know, how much do we save if we eliminate car allowances for certain directors and staff? What do we save if we reassess free passes to different activities? Those kinds of activities. And if we did an assessment of some of those costs, I think that would instill a lot of confidence in the public, just the fact that we put some dollar numbers to some of the things we offer, and people, I think, would appreciate seeing, hey, they're actually thinking about what the impact is of these fun things that they implement as a city council. So
Sid,
those are my thoughts.
I had a question. So Sid, do you know what the dollar figure is of the passes that we give out?
I saw it recently, but I couldn't quote it specifically. I think it's
around.
It's less than, I want to say, $7,000 or $8,000, and that's for volunteers who volunteer their time in the city. So Ben, last week we asked for a written proposal. Do you have that this week that you could pass out to the council and staff?
I published it on my Facebook page, a specific written proposal. I'll send you guys a link.
Okay, that would be great. And so that has specific dollar amounts of what you're describing?
That has broad categories of innovative budgeting areas where I would assess, and the kinds of things that I've asked staff to look into, and we've been encouraged to see if there's appetite amongst this whole body to get the dollar figures for what those kinds of benefits are, and I'm all for doing that.
Because I feel as though you've been making the claim for the past 3.5 years that it is your responsibility to go through the budget as your claim with zero-based budgeting, and you need to be responsible for finding those dollar amounts. You have access to the budget just like anyone else, and I was just hoping that maybe you'd have some specific numbers for us, as you've been claiming you have for the past 3.5 years, that we could really analyze this a little bit deeper. I guess that's what I was looking for tonight.
Yeah, I think everybody in this city knows my philosophy. Well, everybody that's paying close attention, which may be only a small fraction of the city, but most of the people that are paying attention know that my style of leadership is not to micromanage. We hire directors who are great at what they do because they have responsibility for budgets, and we set the budget at this level. One of the easy ways to do this kind of an exercise would be to say a certain percentage across the board. You know, we cut 5% off every budget. We would free up a lot of money to put towards roads, to fund it roads first.
Would you be able to give us a dollar amount to that 5% and what services would be cut with that?
That's not, like I said, that's not my purview to tell Mike Smith, if you had 5% less money, what would you do? How would you reallocate within your department? I think
that is our duty as a city council, is the budget.
Our duty is to set budget allocations for various departments, and then we hire directors who can manage that budget.
So this initiative, are you in support of the initiative? It's because it's asking us to actually do that. Do you support the initiative?
I support this activity of doing budgeting as a process. I think that's an important exercise.
So you don't want to answer the question. You don't support this initiative, or yes, you do?
I have a lot of interest in this initiative. I think it has a lot to offer our city as a priority. I support the priority of funding roads first, as articulated. I think I heard tonight this idea that we are not necessarily in favor of any cuts, but I like the idea of making sure we do fund our roads. To me, that has been the highest priority of the public. In every interaction I've had with the public, they've told me, with precious few exceptions, people have said they wish that we would put money towards roads. And here's an interesting thing about putting money towards roads that's worth thinking about. If we funded our roads first, I wrote a few weeks ago that every day we delay, we're burning $6,300. Because roads fall into further and further and more expensive repair categories, we are saving our services. We're doing more for our city employees by taking care of the roads because we are exacerbating a financial crisis by delaying.
But I think we've already been through that. All of us agree that we need to do something for our roads. I'm not asking you that. I'm just asking. It sounds like to me that you're in favor of this initiative. To me,
I love
putting
the
roads
idea,
first.
I love the idea of making sure that our roads are fully funded. It is a critical infrastructure. There's no dispute that it is a fundamental role of municipalities. It makes perfect sense to me that if this is costing us exponentially growing amounts of money over time to fail to do that we shouldn't kick the can. We should fund our roads first and then say, what are the service implications? What are the creative accounting things we can do? And then come back and say, yeah, the public doesn't want to lose any services, so we can only save. And when Scott and the staff are willing to do this analysis with the support of each of us as elected officials to run the numbers, we save, let's say, $500,000 by changing the way we do our training, changing the lengths of time that we hold on to certain computer equipment or vehicles to try to eke out every penny we can. These are the kinds of the decisions that members of our city, members of our community have to make around the kitchen table when we raise taxes. They have to figure out, how do I make that work? I have to delay the carpet replacement in my home. I have to reduce the number of extracurriculars my kids can participate in because I have to come up with another.
So I have one last question for you.
Whatever.
We talked
I'm not
about.
finished. If you'd let me finish,
I
appreciate it.
You have all night. Go ahead.
Thanks, Eric. Appreciate that. So to the extent that we find some savings and do a better job of budgeting and prioritizing and reflecting the priorities of the public, we will most likely have some savings we can achieve. And it may be painful, but I've always argued that the people of our city will stand up and roll up sleeves and work with us if they see shared sacrifice and they see us doing all we can to minimize the impact on their bottom line and in their wallets, that we can then say, we have done all that we can do. We have achieved new efficiencies. And maybe it does involve privatizing certain services that the city offers. That's one of the things I've written about, the possibility of privatizing certain activities. We take all the...
Wait, be specific there.
We could privatize all kinds of things, but
We
could say, rather than having plowing done through the city, we hire out to do our plowing. And some cities have done that, sometimes with mixed success. I certainly know the stories of people that have plowed.
Cottonwood Heights.
Yeah, outsourced their plowing and had some bad experiences. We could do it better, I think. We're looking at privatizing in a variety of ways.
No, keep being specific.
I think there's a lot of things we can explore. We asked staff not long ago when we were looking at a PSB building to do an analysis of the courts. I've had a number of people continue to point me to that analysis and say there are certain shortfalls in the way we did analysis, and we could outsource our courts in a different way. We have a lot of things that could be outsourced.
Keep being specific.
There's a whole host of them. I mean, every single service the city offers could be outsourced. We could use a different ambulance service as an option to outsource the ambulance services of the city. And it may be that we could find that there's, in a lot of cases, I've done personally the analysis on dispatch, whether it makes sense. And if you just look at the budgets and the costs associated with dispatch and the 911 money that we get in, it's a wash in terms of whether it makes sense to outsource dispatch. But when you have to build a new building for it, the analysis may change. So my point is there's not a single service in the city that we couldn't explore the possibility of outsourcing, privatizing, or re-examining. There's not one. So is that specific enough for you, Diana?
Yes.
We could look at them all. And I think they all deserve an analysis. They deserve a meaningful analysis. I think the public is clamoring for meaningful analyses like these in every category across the city. And so as we explore all those options and show some real leadership as a city, I think we could build some trust with the public. People would say, yes, we see that this is being done. It's being done in a responsible and efficient way. There are services in the city that could be assessed for their user fees and their impacts. We talked a lot last week about Fox Hollow after and during the meeting slightly. There are options.
What are the options there?
With Fox Hollow?
Uh-huh.
We have representation on the board of Fox Hollow. We could request that fees there get raised, that more is charged.
They just raised the fees.
Well, we could request an even larger increase to reduce the amount of subsidy the city makes to that. There's all kinds of options. And we can explore them all night. We should explore them frequently, I think. It's my view that we should have those kind of conversations on a recurring basis because that's what the public expects. But after doing all of that, I think the public, again, would be right by our side to say we will do all we can to make sure we don't lose a library activity, that we don't lose a firefighter.
Actually, your numbers are not just we lose an activity. The numbers here is that we lose the library. We lock it down for a block of new road.
There are.
Nope. That's what the numbers say. So where's Jacob?
Show me the analysis, Diana, because I don't, be specific.
Okay. So the annual budget of the library is 680. Somebody help me. 638. So, and I'm not argumentative here. I'm looking at, I'm trying really, really hard to understand this because you know that the people that talk to me, they want to pay for the roads and they don't want their services cut. First of all, I want this shouted from the rooftops. I think our directors do an amazing job with the amount of money that they have. And I want to say this because their operating expenses have not increased. Their operating budgets, thank you. You keep me on here.
The expenses increase.
Well, yeah, their expenses have gone up. So they haven't increased since 08, 09. Give or take, and I'm trying to be.
I've been here.
Okay.
In general.
Okay. Thank you, Scott,
In
for
general,
clarifying.
When we do our budgets, when you look at our one-pagers, we do not set aside money for increase in operations. There have been changes in operations on one-off assessments here and there, but in the past we have not, at least since I've been here, we have not looked at that and said, okay, police, your operating budget is $750,000. We know that ammunition is going up. We know that the cost of a bulletproof jacket's going up, but we're not giving them any more money to do that.
Yes.
Now, some of them we've handled in one-offs where we've said, okay, we've taken one-time money and done certain things like
A capital project.
But generally speaking, we have not increased the operating budget.
Okay. So and just bear with me because it takes me a little while to express myself. So I know that their operational budgets have not increased. And Scott, what was the population of the city when you came in?
I started in 2010. I think the census was 33,501, if I remember
Okay.
right. That sound right? I don't know.
So the population has risen. And so I think that the directors literally have serviced us tremendously. And I know that some analysis, I think that the budget that the directors really do every year, especially because they do give money back, a lot of them give money back to the city. So I think they're being very good stewards with the money that they have. We have increased. Our employees have not risen with the population. So I think that so do you see what I'm saying? They're doing a great job. I look back here at a drip behind the chief. I don't know if anybody's been in the bathroom here. So we haven't changed the carpet. We haven't fixed our bathrooms. I mean, we've been very, very good with our money. So, and the next thing I'm going to say, I really want shouted from the rooftops. The most precise and best measurement of road usage is fuel. So, okay, everybody got that? The best measurement of usage on your road is how much fuel you buy. That is the most precise measurement.
I don't know that I agree, but.
Because it's not property tax. Because I have a couple of people that are older and they live in a $500,000 home and they have one car and they drive a couple of times a week. I live in a $250,000 home and I have 8 cars in my driveway. So property tax is not a measurement of road usage. So I am begging the state legislature to please come together. I think it's something like here's some bad English. If they increased, see, that's what you do when you can't find the spelling, you just use a different one. If they increased the gas tax 4 cents, they would be able to pay for every road in Utah. Okay. Well, they just raised it a quarter cents. What did they raise it?
All right, let me clarify.
Thank you. Just
Just
tell me, how much would we have to raise to fix the road in Pleasant Grove?
If we needed to generate another 2.3 million as a city, it would be dollars on the gallons. Because that money goes to the state and then it's divided. Mostly the state takes 70% and we take 30%.
Okay.
And so I don't remember how much it went up last time. So it just went up.
I thought it was a quarter cent.
No, the quarter cent was on the sales tax.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so it was.
We have so many taxes.
Yeah, So it went up a few cents on the gas tax, and that generated an extra $180,000 for us.
Okay.
So to multiply that by 20, or maybe not 20, 15 would give you a sense. It would have to be a very substantial increase for us to be whole on the gas tax.
Okay. I do know that they were raising it regularly, and then 20 years ago they stopped raising it.
And so the new, what's being proposed is that there is a little bit of an inflationary ability. So this 180, we don't know what the inflationary ability is yet. So that number could go up, but it's going to go up a few thousand a year. It's not going to go up tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands. So for the sake of our discussions, we just keep that number flat. But in the future, as revenues change, because in 4 years, we don't know if the legislature does something or if Utah County decides to adopt HB 362, and the quarter-cent sales tax. That's another $360,000 now to us as a city. So, and that's money that could now go into this budget that could be reduced elsewhere as far as those things. If we're already at our 3.8 million.
Scott, sorry, can I ask him, let's go back to before 2000. Can you even think of a city that's had to even have this conversation before of trying to fund the roads without a road fee?
Before 2010?
Yeah. Or 2010, 2000, 1995.
I mean, most of what I've seen is cities have done a general obligation bond, and they have done a certain amount of roads at one time, similar to what we did with our Class C monies in 2008. But they had it voted on by the people. They passed a general obligation bond. They bonded for X amount of dollars. They did a bunch of roads at one time.
Because I don't say from the beginning of time, but very, very long time that we've been getting our monies from the state. Class C, right?
Well, Class C is, I don't know if it's ever, I don't know any city that I'm aware of that's enough to meet all their road.
Correct.
I emailed all the city managers. I said, tell me, how are you doing your road funding? And it was, I was a little surprised. There are quite a few cities that chuck general fund money in. And the amounts vary. And for some, the amounts vary dependent on projects. So in a given year, it might be 500,000, and then the next year it's none out of the general fund. They handle that per project. Ours is just a blanket 325 as to where we're at. And a few other cities kind of have a blanket number, but there's some cities that don't put any general fund money in. And there's some that it's substantial. Some of the higher sales tax paying cities, I mean, they're coming close to matching their Class C road allotment, which, I mean, that'd be fantastic if we could do that. But, I think they have a little bit more money to do things like that.
So I would love it if the state could take care of it. They're not working that direction. And so I just want to say what my peeps are telling me. And that is, even if we could find even $500,000 in innovative budgeting, we're still going to have to shut down a serious service that is important to them.
Unless we raise the funds for that.
And they're not willing to say, for a block of new road, I'm willing to shut down the library. So when you say to someone, we're going to cut a service, they're not willing to do that for a block of new road.
I don't think anybody's asking them to.
I think that's what the initiative is saying.
That's not how I read it.
Okay.
Any other comments?
Not for me.
Any other questions for Jacob?
Councilmember Stanley, so I just read through your post.
Hey, I was talking.
Oh, you were?
Should have been listening to Diana.
I'm sorry, Sid.
And there's still not specific amounts. Is there another date that we could get that you could bring a hard copy to pass out to the council and staff and mayor with your proposed ideas for reducing the budget or finding innovative ways to address that?
Are we all in agreement to instruct staff to do some of the analysis that I've requested?
I again propose that it's our duty.
We need to find out where the council's at on prioritizing and coming up with the detail for our response, the fiscal response. I think right now the council is reacting to the information that has been given. At least that's my read.
Yeah, thank you.
And in a probably, I mean, if they had even 4 hours to think about this after the reaction, you might get a different set of thoughts or comments back. Right now, I think rightfully so, the tensions and emotions are still fresh and high. So it takes time to get that out of your system and then really comprehend what is being asked and what the assignment is, the reality of the assignment, and then logically wrap your head around how do you approach that, because there is a required response from the city, and that response needs to be correct and accurate. And so we have to come up with that prioritized list to back up the 100-word summary. And that's assuming that this goes all the way, the citizen initiative goes all the way to a ballot. Is that reasonable?
So
You guys-
you're saying we need a direction to give staff to move forward with this initiative?
Yeah, and I have some proposals for you on how that might work. But I do want to make sure that everybody's ready to kind of wrap their head around that. And I recognize that there's reaction going on. I had the same reaction when I first, it took me a minute to understand, okay, here's what's going on with a citizen initiative. Now I have a reaction to that and what it might mean. But there's also an assignment that's required by law that we have to get through and get through it fairly quickly. We need the response written by
March 28th.
March 28th.
3 weeks from today.
So that means we need to give staff as much time as possible to work on the detail and the summary statement. So we need to provide the direction as quickly as we can. If we're ready to provide that direction tonight, we can do that. If we're not, we probably want to reconvene here tomorrow or the day after to kind of focus just on what that direction is going to be, so they do have the time to put into the detail.
I'm ready.
Guys, where are you at?
Ready to have the staff move forward and how this initiative affects levels of services in our city.
Okay.
I am too.
Yeah, and if you're looking for specific direction, I think,
I have the direction. So we're going to discuss it, and then we're going to kind of go down a path so that we can all arrive at the same place, and hopefully we won't end up like we are at the moment, which is opposite ends of the spectrum. We just kind of need to come together now and focus on the task at hand. So we have a citizen initiative that is a reality. They're moving forward with that, and the proper legal thing for us to do is provide direction to staff, because staff has to come up with the detail to back up a 100-word summary response that's fiscally addresses the impact and provides the detail for the public that they can look at in the voter information packet, assuming this goes all the way to ballot. So that's our assignment, and we have a hard deadline of March 28th.
28th,
Okay.
we have to have it done.
All right, so in 2015, we did ask the staff, and they did provide for us a prioritized list of services that are being provided. In 2011,
So sorry, it wasn't prioritized. We just listed the services and what they cost. So
let me restate
Yeah.
what I'm trying to say so we don't get all discombobbled. And I think it's important. The
Yeah, I think
words here
so.
are getting picked
I think
apart, so I want to make sure
I think
I'm
we want
clear.
clear direction on our end.
What I think at this point, what we have done is stated how much different things cost. What we have not done is made it current to 2017 and then assigned a relative priority to them, because we need to identify the fiscal impact that if this initiative passed, this is what it would mean. There would be an effect on these areas. My recommendation is that we group them by services, because that's how the public receives them. They don't receive things necessarily by department. They receive services, and they're paying for those services. So this initiative would cause us to change the way the services are currently funded. And we have an option at that point to either raise taxes or fees to cover the services that are the least relative order of priority, or to not cover them, and then they need to be cut. And I think what I heard is there are people in the community that prefer no new taxes or fees. There are those that would be okay with it after trimming was done, and then there are those that they don't care. Go ahead and raise the fee and fully fund the roads. That's what I thought I heard. So back to the assignment. If we take the 2011 list of priorities that a prior council worked on, we take out the items that do not fall within the general fund, and we identify the items that are required to be funded because they're debt obligated or whatever. And then this council goes through and prioritizes them, like this is an A, this is a B, this is a C, that's a 1, 2, 3, so that they're relatively prioritized. Then you can look at the ones that you've assigned a lower priority to relative to the others, and you can say, what do those add up to? And the numbers will be there. And does it approach the 2.3 million or 2.6? It's going to be 2.3 that we're looking for. Does it approach the 2.3? And if it does, then okay, you're there. You know which services would be affected, and you know what to do about that, whether you're going to try to raise some other funding to cover them, or you're going to reduce them. If it doesn't approach the 2.3 million, then you probably need to look at some of the priority B services that are being provided and look at those and say, okay, here are the additional services that would be affected until you hit the $2.3 million mark. So I'm trying to be really high level here so that we understand one way to approach this. So how about some reaction to that?
Well, I remember Russ doing this last year. We did the 1s and 2s. I think that's what you're referring to. Okay. I mean, to me, it can be subjective, right? Because you have us 5, and including yourself, 6 on that. But I think we need to include our directors on that so they represent. So at least they have some say to it.
Okay, so let me chime in on this just a little, and this is going to be a little difficult for the council and for the staff. I don't think the directors should be involved in a political decision. The directors need to be isolated from the politics, and they need to focus on facts and numbers and services that are being delivered. It's the council's job to come up with the political decision as to how that's to be administered and respond.
I think that's well said, and I agree.
So then can we have numbers, employees associated with each of those departments for us?
Yeah, so I guess the way that I was envisioning this, we list the service, we list the cost out of the general fund, and we list the number of employees that provide that service, so that as you start eliminating services or reducing services, we keep a tally to say, here's the dollars, but also here's the number of employees, full-time and part-time, that are now not going to be employed because that service is.
So I want to just clarify something here. Until this meeting, I was under the impression that it would be these are the services that will no longer be provided. There's an option to provide those services by raising taxes or raising a fee, and that is also a decision that this body would have to make. Are you going to raise a fee or a tax to provide for the services that are most likely to be impacted by this change in how the budget is administered? That's assuming that it goes all the way to ballot and it succeeds. That would be the thing that we'd have to do.
So as we have been discussing tonight, I just got done sending an email to Scott and Denise saying that we should discuss maybe alternative language in our fiscal note to say these are the services and programs that will be eliminated in order to get to the 2-3. Alternatively, this is how high the property tax will have to be raised in order to get to the 2-3. So that on the fiscal note, I don't think there's any way that you can make those decisions in the next 2 weeks in terms of, are we going to cut programs exclusively, or are we going to raise property tax exclusively? So I was thinking perhaps we would just do an alternative language in the fiscal note that says these are the services and the things that will be cut in order to get to that. Alternatively, if those services aren't cut, here's what your property tax is going to look like in order to fund that deficit. I don't think we can go back if this ordinance is adopted and we designate the 2.625 to go into a special fund roads first revenue line item, we can't go back and raise a road fee in all good consciousness
Correct.
because we've just funded the roads.
Right.
So really, the only other tax that we have is the property tax. So when you say taxes and fees, let's be specific, like Councilmember Anderson was asking, and say, really, it's property tax being raised to fund the deficit, or it's services being cut. And given that there may be some, small amount of the 2.3 that can be squeezed out of the existing budget, but it's not going to be the lion's share of that 2.3.
Right, so let me ask specifically, are we certain at this point in the game that property tax is the only fee or tax that could be affected after the election or the vote?
To raise that kind of funds, and one of the things we didn't bring up when Councilmember Stanley was talking about raising, user fees, is that we actually do an analysis, and we have done an analysis as recently as last year in our budget process to say, where are our user fees for the rec center? Where are our user fees for the swimming pool? Are they marketed comparison? Are we charging enough? And we have, over the last several years, made adjustments every single year to increase revenue from those fees. And so, I'm not saying there's not more money to be found. I'm saying that given the percentage of what we need to find, what you're going to find that in user fees is going to be very minuscule to the delta that you're going to have to meet. And so
that's a commentary on top of the question.
well, I'm just saying,
I'm wondering.
really, it's property taxes. I mean,
Okay,
what
so
else
property
are you gonna
tax is
raise?
the only,
It's the only tax you can raise.
that's the only tax
That's
that
the
this
only
body
tax
can
you
affect.
have.
But, so maybe, Tina, maybe Mayor, if I'm understanding correctly, we could raise the rate at the rec center to $10 a day if you want to go work out at the rec center. That could be another way instead of a property tax. We could raise the daily admission to $10 at the pool. That's what it takes to completely start turning a profit at those centers. Those rates could be raised. Programs, if we're talking about privatizing, my boys playing privatized soccer goes from $53 for a recreation program to about $500 to a privatized program. So we could raise those fees. Is that correct?
Well, we could say we're not providing soccer
Right, you
anymore.
can say
If
we're
you
not
want your
providing
kids to
soccer,
play,
go
they have
go
to
get
go
them.
to the
Yeah.
private.
Okay.
So we wouldn't be able to give privatized fees for rec programs. What we would say is we're no longer providing that program.
Okay.
So if you want your kid to play soccer, baseball, football, whatever it is, you're going to have to go find that in the private sector because the city's no longer going to provide
But
it.
we could raise the rate at the daily admission and classes and things like that at the rec center and pool. I mean, I'm just throwing a number out because I don't know what it's going to be to equal the profit. $10 a time, $5 a time, $8 a time. We could double, triple what that current rate is right now and increase user fees that way to start turning not only a profit for that facility, but also to put towards roads, or how would that work?
No,
Well,
because
to-
you would already have funded the roads with the ordinance.
Yeah.
You would
So-
taken all the money out of general fund to fund the roads. So no more, and the one thing that I don't think everybody understands is we are not allowed to use our fees for revenue generation. Our fees have to be substantiated by actual costs of providing the service for building permit fees, anything that we're charging outside of the rec center and the swimming pool, those recreational facilities, but any other fee that we charge has to be justified. So we can't go back and say, we need $1 million. Let's raise every fee that we have in the city until we get to that $1 million point. That's not going to be legal. That's going to be challenged. If you want to entertain raising the rec fee to go to the rec center 3 times over, that's a market question, right? How many people are going to be willing to pay that amount of money to come to the rec center?
So there's two different things on the table. One is the assignment to respond to the citizen initiative, and that's, here's the impact. And what Tina has just described is, I think, to substantially affect the 2.3 so that the services are not eliminated or reduced. The only real source of revenue at that future date and time, January or July 2018, would be property tax.
But I still want to look at the two alternatives where it's
Now, the
eliminate
alternatives you're
completely
talking
or
about,
property
right,
tax.
that's something the council can do
Every year.
during this year.
Yes.
During this discussion that we started before the citizen initiative, and let's not confuse them, there's a discussion on the table about how do you fund roads. This is one option, the citizen initiative. And if you'd like, we can go back and say, okay, what if this program paid for itself? What if this one paid for itself through fees? What if this one paid for itself? And then you look at it and say, okay, what does that do to the other services that would be affected? Same approach, but it's a proactive approach on the council's part. And what it results in is, okay, you're going to have these services that are affected. You need to fund them. Here is one part of the funding. Another part would be a road fee. Another part would be property tax, whatever it is that you know, the council came up with, whatever's legal. But those would have to take effect before this ballot measure was actually approved by the voters.
But I think when you're asking what options do we want to look at, I like the idea of an alternative of them coming back saying services eliminated or property tax increase. Can we do that?
Yeah, what we can do is, and this is something we have to do anyway because we have to give this response, is here is the general fund budget. If you take 2.3 million off the top, here are the priorities of what's remaining, and here's the ones that would be readily affected. Here's the next group that would be readily affected until you hit that 2.3 million, because that's what's going to get removed. Can you come up with the rest of the analysis for raising fees or other sources by 2 weeks? No, we're not going to get that done in the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Right.
But over the course of the remainder of this year, we absolutely can get those things done.
But I'm looking for in 2 weeks a list of services that would no longer be able to be funded, and then a property tax increase as the alternative. That's what I'd like to see.
Yes.
That's what
in 2
Tina
weeks.
described.
Okay, and that's
could
what
be
I would
done.
like to see.
Okay,
That
so,
was after, yeah.
and on top of that, I'm wondering because if you take away the service, so let's say library, because it's been, you know, okay, or let's say rec center, because when was the rec center? 06?
2007.
7. So because at that time, this is what it cost, this is what we've been paying. If we remove that and now come up with a new property tax at a different interest rate, or, you know, at a different
The property
cost
tax
of
is
delivery, it's going to be different though, right?
The property tax isn't going to be tied to a bond at
Okay.
that point. It's just going to be a revenue generation.
But is the cost that we're paying right now, would it be different in today's market?
The cost to pay for what?
Say the rec center, servicing the rec center.
So the capital cost is already set. The ongoing operations, so we have a gap of what it costs and how much money we collect on the services, and then that gap is funded by the general fund.
So is that number different than it would have been in 06, 07?
I don't know what the number was. I'm assuming we have always subsidized the rec center with the general fund.
I know, but if we're going out to the public now and saying, okay, yes, you voted for this in 07, now you have to vote for it again in 16, is the amount of money different?
No, well, because.
Or the cost, so this is, okay, help me verbalize
Okay,
this.
yeah.
So, we eliminate a service, the rec center. We put all the money towards roads. Now we go back to the citizens and we say, we would like to vote again on the services at the rec center.
So property tax increase does not require a vote.
Yeah, you're not going to put that on the
That's
ballot.
only if we're going to use it to bond. We're going to do a general obligation bond. So this is the city
So
council.
how do we go back to the citizens and ask them to refund the rec center?
So
We don't
you're,
refund
you're asking a question that in this discussion won't exist because you can't go back and raise a tax like the way you're talking about it. What we would say is, we would say, in order to keep these services fully funded, we would need to raise property tax by X. And magically, it happens to be really similar to the numbers that were put up here for roads, because that's what the total is.
It's the same amount of revenue.
It's the same number.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think, Diana, when we're done, when we have this analysis in front of you, your questions are going to be somewhat answered.
Okay.
So
I just was wondering if the cost of service is the same as it was in '07 as it is now.
No, I'll say it's
well,
No,
no.
just take the budget and look at the budget from '07 and look at the budget from now. There's a difference.
but we've raised our rates.
And we've raised
we've
rates,
done
but
things.
it's still different.
But we're talking about just the general fund contribution to the rec center. That's what's on the table. And so the actual cost of the services and what we charge for those services, those have fluctuated every year to a point where we have a different number every year as to what the general fund is paying to make sure that the recreation center can stay open. If that, let's say it's $80,000 a year, if that $80,000 a year goes away because of this, because of a citizen initiative or because of this 2.3 million that has to be cut, the rec center can no longer operate but for either increasing the revenues, to what Sid was saying.
Right.
How much do we need to increase in order to make it level? Or our programs. Are we going to charge more on our programs to make sure that those operations are now level? But that's the alternatives that are in front of you. And what the mayor was saying and what is true is we're going to have an analysis on the cost for the services, but we're not going to be able to deep dive into what people charge for the rec and for the swim pool, so that we can unveil that to you to say, well, here's now what we're going to have to charge to bridge that gap.
Not in 2 weeks.
No,
Or 3 weeks.
But we'll have a little note at the bottom that will say, via property tax increase, via increases in the cost of the fees for these services. There's other ways that the council can do that, but it's still money out of the people's pocket. And so we're going to articulate that way the best we can so that residents know here's what's on the table, but here's also some alternatives to maybe provide the funding for that. So it doesn't necessarily have to be all cuts. It can be a property tax increase and that's just a shuffle of money.
But
That's all
in
that
2
is.
weeks, I think we should include what could be cut and then the property tax increase, the
Yes.
two alternatives, correct?
The language
That will
can,
happen, yes.
That language can do that
Yeah.
with a very dull knife at a high level.
Correct.
We're not going to be able to do that
Right.
surgically.
Totally fine.
So, are we getting closer to moving forward on this first part?
A question about the petition. Can online signatures count?
No. No, so they're going to get a verified form from Kathy, and that form has certain requirements on it. They have to take it around and have them sign it. I don't know how online petitions would work, because I just don't know how that would work.
And then when people go door to door for this initiative, do they have to include the city portion, the 140 words from the city, when they go door to door?
So the executive, there's a fiscal note that we're going to prepare that doesn't have a limit on it. That can be a deep dive, right? Then there's a summary, the fiscal summary, that can't be more than 100 words. That summary has to be at the top of each page of the petition. So theoretically, anybody who's going to sign the petition for the initiative is going to see, and the statute says 12-point bold type at the top of each page is going to be our short fiscal impact statement that says, if you support this initiative, be aware you're either going to lose these services or you're going to have to make up
X amount of dollars with property taxes or other increased fees.
Okay.
Something like that,
Okay.
whatever it turns out to be. But they will see that on each page of the signature pages for the petition.
So that's the direction I'd like to see staff move is something like that, of how it affects our level of services with the 2.3 million in property tax, as you stated, so.
2.3 gap.
Yes.
With 325
So,
already being here.
in order to make that have meaning, we would ask staff to come back with this list of all of the services that are provided in the general fund. And then we, over the course of the next week, need to prioritize, or relatively prioritize, A, B, C, or 1, 2, 3, so that when we come back, we actually have numbers associated with priorities that the staff can then add up, and then we can decide as a council from an action standpoint these other decisions, like do you want the language to be cut them or raise property taxes to keep them. Any questions?
We'll see this
Next week.
next week.
Next week we need to.
No, 2 weeks.
I think we'll have to,
I don't think we
Correct?
have that much time.
Let me say this, we'll do our best to have them in 10 days and emailed to you so that you can have decisions by the 21st. Is that fair enough?
Yeah, that's reasonable.
Here's part of the deal, is Denise is also presenting on the rest of our budget next Tuesday. And there's still stuff that has to be done for that, and this on top of that. And so I'm worried about her time, and we understand that we're under a gun time-wise, but it just so happens to be that most of the stuff you're going to see next Tuesday is stuff that Denise has to prepare, so.
You guys okay with 10 days? And then taking a couple of days to individually do your prioritizing, turn it back in so it can be tabulated.
We'll tabulate it.
And then we can have the summaries together.
We'll
that we
present it on
can
the 21st.
Talk about.
So I thought, are we doing prioritizing in public?
If we do it this way, we'd need to prioritize them individually and then come together with those priorities listed. We would do the prioritizing on our own time, individually, not having a meeting, and then we would have staff tabulate it for us. If we want to do it here in the meeting, then we need to notice it, and you won't have the benefit of the detail that Denise needs to provide because she has this other thing to prepare for.
Well, I guess in a different way, similar to that, is if I email it out and say, here's the list, and then you send that back to us and we tabulate it on the 21st when we meet, you can take a look at that and say, is that consistent with where we're at? And then you can have the discussion in that meeting if there's things that you want to move up and down that list. I mean, this is just going to be a summary of what 6 of you have said. I mean, that's what it's going to be. It's not necessarily going to be a call to action until you guys look at that and say, here's the call to action. Here's what we're settling on.
That's not a call to action. It's here are the priorities that individually you've stated, and now collectively this is what it tabulates to.
So like priority, so every city service,
That comes out of the general fund.
right? So I have to prioritize and say, ooh, I like the library more than I like the rec center.
Exactly. And you've already done it.
For the record.
In case you were wondering, you do.
And you've already done it once. So this would be kind of reviewing what you've done and make sure that you're still in agreement with where you were before. Some of you, I guess, haven't done it. I'm not, off the top of my head, I can't.
We did it at a retreat.
Well, yeah.
It was just last year.
Okay, so generally, do we understand the direction?
Say we get going. There's
I
your
understand
direction.
the directions.
Okay.
So in the next 10 days, you will email us a list of all of the city services that are coming from the general fund. They will include the dollar amounts associated with them. We will individually go ahead and place priorities on them, and it'll either be an ABC or a 1, 2, 3. When we send this back to you with the priorities, 1 being absolutely mission critical and 3 being not, right? Once we've done that, you'll tabulate what the collective response is from the council, and then add up what the dollar amounts might be in total for each of those
You'll see an
groupings.
all-inclusive list with probably a line that says this is where you meet the 2.3. And then the council will have to go through and say, okay, is there some stuff below the line that we want above the line, and vice versa.
Okay, we can start with that.
Something like that.
We
Just-
can start
just
with
to
that
start
and
it.
then,
Yep.
and then work on it at our meeting.
Yep.
After we've tabulated them.
So are we getting your language before or after we do this?
No, the language is, we have to settle on what it's going to be, and then we'll sit down with staff and we'll write the 100-word summary that we'll get back in front of you to say, are you okay with this, essentially?
Yeah, so this one isn't a hypothesis and then we go to prove it or disprove it. This one is, we do the work and we summarize what was done. A little different.
I guess the tricky things in my mind is there are still some things that cross all services, like training, like the, local option training. That crosses all of our services. But we're not going to have a quantified.
Not, if we divide it by service, we're not going to go
gonna
into
be
the
able to see
detail
that.
of saying, here's how much money we spend on people going to St. George, or here's how much we're spending on car allowances or whatever. It's not going to be that
It's just not going
specific.
to show up that way.
Yeah.
Well, if you do it that way, the whole thing should be done that way.
Yeah.
As opposed to by service. You should do it by category.
Well,
And we've got to pick one.
When we're getting to
or
that
the
point,
other.
it's almost by line item detail on every single transaction that we make. I mean, because there's so many things that we do, and even our line item budgets have pretty general categories with various different types of expenses. So that gets pretty deep.
We do
some
have
of that
buckets,
stuff.
though. We
Yeah.
have some buckets.
Well, no, the buckets we're going to be able to. The buckets are the services.
There's other buckets, like you have people buckets. I mean, you can pull out total number of people and total salaries if we're doing it that way.
Mm-hmm. No, we could give you a list
Could
of every
say
employee.
all
and-
vehicles or
Yep, yep.
that kind of thing, because there are categories.
Yeah, there's different ways we could do this. We're just suggesting the service approach because we've already done some of the research.
But Ben, if you feel like there's specific things you have access to the budget, you could go through and find them.
They're not tracked in the budget that way. And so there are different.
Well, let me say this. Ben asked me for that, and some of the stuff is easy to get. Some of the stuff is not so easy to get. And so my response to him was, I want a direction from the council as a body as to what we're going to do for research as staff. So something like a car allowance, that would take us really quick to do something. But like what the mayor's saying, if we're going to evaluate things to that level, then everything needs to be evaluated to that level. The one consistent way to do it is say, here's the services and what they cost. And so it's a little bit different than what Ben's asking, because we're not going to get into the specific travel and training and the cost of that, because that's a level of service that plays into the personnel that are providing the service to the employees. And so there's going to be a cost to that. It's going to be associated with the service that's being provided.
And we don't have a lot of extra hours.
We don't have 6 months to break it down to that level. We've got 10 days.
Okay, so
So I'm clear on our direction. Can I just recommend that, as we've talked about the different scenarios with the road fees, that we postpone any further discussion until we get through this exercise so that we can focus our time on that?
Yeah.
And then we can bring that
you
back.
guys okay with that?
In April or whatever.
So we won't
when
we won't
meet again.
continue on the other discussion until we've finished the response to the citizen initiative.
Thank you. We'd
Right.
appreciate that.
Well, I'm not. I'm ready to have the discussion on the roads.
Right, except that we don't have enough resources in people and time to do all of the analysis that we need to. Unless the whole council wants to switch that, what we can't do is have individuals going to staff now in the next 2 to 3 weeks. I need this, I need this, I need this, and it's all related to the same thing, because it'll just reduce the amount of time that's available to focus on the overall answer.
Well, let me say it this way, Eric. If the council said tonight, here's our road fee, then we now need to schedule a public hearing, and now staff needs to get materials ready to go out to the public. And so that stuff, we're not going to have time to do that. And so like I said, if the council is going to decide on a road fee, which you can tonight,
But implementation and public notice and public education on that stuff, we won't be able to really get into that till beginning of April. So if you want to give us direction and say, here's the fee that we want to settle on, that's great. But we're going to need time before we can really go out to the public and say, here's what it is.
All of us would have to do that, so.
And it requires all of us, and we really, to do it right, we really need to take the time and put all of that information together and analyze it, just like we're doing in an abbreviated manner with the general fund and this blunt instrument. Okay, any other discussion on this? All right, let's move forward on that one. Thank you. All right, review and discuss the March 14th meeting. Okay,
I was gonna say-
so we will suspend that discussion. Okay. Neighborhood and staff business, Libby? Not tonight? Okay. Ken? Dave? Okay.
That microphone's dead.
I am happy to report that the safety committee was started last year and had about half a year to go through. This one. Here we go. The safety committee got word. We know that we announced, or we told you during the retreat, that we were applying for the TAP award, the Trust Accountability Program award, and we got word this week that the safety committee received that, which will end up being $7,500 to our insurance premium. So
That's fantastic.
wanted to follow up on that for you.
Anything else, David? Okay, Marty? Nothing? Dave?
Just one thing. Don't know if they'll be doing it tomorrow, but over where Bongs and State Street Grill, those buildings are going to be raised soon to make way for a car wash and stuff. Our guys, American Fork guys and Lone Peak firefighters have been over there doing some training and stuff. So if you drive by and see something going on over there, it's just training. Just for your information.
Flames too?
Go Flames.
No flames, okay. Anything else, Dave? Mike? No? Sherry? Denise? Scott?
I've said plenty, thank you.
Tina?
Good, Mayor.
Okay. Kathy? Diana?
I've said too much too.
Eric?
I'm going to go on record one last time that I am against the Citizens Initiative. I think it will do harm to our employees and the levels of service that it provides.
Anything else? All right. Sid? Lynn? Ben?
I think I'm good, thanks.
Okay. All right. Do we have any plats to sign? Anything on the calendar that we need to point out?
Just a reminder, and this is in April, but we are planning on canceling our Tuesday, April 4th city council meeting because it is spring break that week and we'll have a lot of people out
Good
of town.
choice.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I need some volunteers
Oh,
to
sorry,
attend
Mayor.
dinners.
Thank you. Kathy just reminded me. On March 22nd, we will have a special meeting to interview general contractors for our building. We were going to do that on the 21st, but we do know now that we have some other items that are going to take some time. And these interviews and decision-making alone will probably take us a couple hours, so.
So you don't want to mix the two discussions?
No, we figured it'd just be best if we kind of keep those separated. So
Okay.
it is another meeting, another night, but that will be Wednesday at 6 o'clock, but it will be strictly interviews and then a decision on our general contractor.
All right. Does somebody want to go to the ballet, and does somebody want to go to meet and greet welcoming thing? Okay, I'll let you come up and fight over those afterwards. If there's no other business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
It's not that I'm against ballet, it's just, I went last time.
Okay. So Eric made a motion, is that what we're saying, Sid? Okay, and Sid seconded it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much, appreciate it. Thanks for the civility tonight, I really appreciated that, that was good.